This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Happy Wednesday and welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Huss and Reem with you for the next couple hours, chopping up a unbelievably awesome night at Canada Life Centre last night. 3-2 overtime win for the Winnipeg Jets in the battle of the two best teams through the season in the National Hockey League. Nikolai Ehlers off of a glorious pass from Dylan Sandberg wins it in OT. The place went nuts, sold out crowd last night. It doesn't get much better than that. And it felt like the playoffs last night. And at the end of the 60 minutes, when the game went to OT, the whiteout played on the screens at Canada Life Centre, and you could put an X beside the Winnipeg Jets as they qualified for the Stanley Cup playoffs, then got an extra point in OT to extend their lead to 8 points over the Dallas Stars, who have 2 games in hand and play tonight and tomorrow in Edmonton and Calgary. So much to get to from last night's game. We're going to dive into it right away. Murat is going to join us a little bit later on. We're also going to take a trip around the National Hockey League and hit a ton of topics with one of our favorites on WST, Mike Kelly of the NHL Network. And then in the final hour of the program, Josh Goldberg is going to join us, and we'll get ready for Jay's season because opening day is tomorrow in the Bigs, and I'm definitely looking forward to that. We'll see whether there's maybe a little bit of traction on an extension for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. with the Toronto Blue Jays. So great to have you all with us. I can see already the vibes are high in the chat. A few of you have stepped away from the ledge after last night's win, and we have a lot to get to. So let's get right to it. Hey, just before we bring in Michael Remis, shout out to everybody listening on the podcast and everyone with us live on YouTube. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't already, and make sure you are subscribed to the Winnipeg Sports Talk YouTube channel. Also want to thank out the amazing group of sponsors that make our show happen every day. Coolbet Canada, Princess Auto, Canadian Club, St. Vital Dental Center, Rollies Transfer, Manitoba Battery, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, Wallace & Wallace, the Winnipeg Jets, F Apparel, Little Brown Jug, fansfirst.ca, Boston Pizza, Royal Sports, and we will get to a Why Not question of the day for Not Autocorp over at Waverly and McGillivray. Michael Remis, you were in the building last night as well. How about that? What a night.
Yeah, what a game. Certainly lived up to the hype. And if you attended the game, we saw expensive ticket pricing on the secondary market there, and you got your money's worth. You went to see Ovechkin score. You got that, but you also got a thrilling Jets overtime win. You got two teams going toe-to-toe for 60 minutes plus. You saw them put out that awesome clinching video after the third, signifying the Jets are going to be in the Stanley Cup playoffs. It was a great night. It's had some celebrity sightings on the Jumbotron with Milt Stegall and Mike O'Shea in the building. Nito Niederreiter had a crew down from Switzerland, all in red Swiss jerseys. You had a great game between two teams. You had some extracurricular stuff as well. Colin Miller and Andrew Mangiapane getting into it. Great goals on both sides. Appleton, end of period snipe, solid goaltending. That game was excellent. I don't think it was quite playoff game. I think Ken gave it a 8 out of 10. I agreed with his. He said 7.58 on Ken. I agreed with Ken on the intensity meter, but a fantastic night last night, and everyone's already fired up for the playoffs here. And the Jets going for number 1 in the Central and the President's Trophy possibly as well.
I'm telling it. Listen, Ken was amazing. Happy birthday again to the big guy. I usually am on side with most of Ken's takes. I thought he nailed just about everything last night on KNR. But I will say this. I could see it being a 7.5 or 8 if you were in the press box last night. If you were in the stands, it was like an 8.5 or a 9. I seriously, I mean, it was, you could feel it in the building, in the people around us last night. And I mean, listen, that goal that Ehlers scored, the eruption in the building was, was a moment that I think really gets us ready for what's to come in a few weeks when the whites are thrown on and that place is full. And listen, both Dan and Paul had amazing calls of the goal. I have listened to Edmonds' call of the Ehlers winner a couple dozen times, I think, already. Basically had it on repeat this morning. If you didn't hear it, this is how it sounded last night with the Ehlers goal and then the celebration in front of 15,000 plus screaming fans. This is Paul Edmonds from the home of the Jets, 680 CJOB.
Puck is gathered up by Winnipeg, and they finally get possession. Speeding through that neutral ice. Nikolai Ehlers carving his way in, moving in, shoots, score! And Nikolai Ehlers will stand in the corner and admire the adulation from the fans. Jets win! Jets win! Jets win! In overtime tonight. A 3-2 final score, and Nikolai Ehlers did it again. What a shot off the rush. And the Winnipeg Jets will go to the postseason with an exclamation mark, with 2 points and a victory for the second straight time over Washington, and sweep the series.
Absolutely electric finish to the game last night, and an electric call from Paul Edmonds on Nikolai Ehlers' winner. And listen, I've already seen a number of people talking in chat, not only about the goal, Remo. How about the pass off the boards by Dylan Samberg? I mean, that could not have been any more perfect. And of course, it was at the end of a long shift. Ehlers had been out there for a long time, but I mean, credit to him, identified the fact that the Washington Capitals were going for a change, found that little bit of open ice, and with the blazing speed of the Dane, he got that high danger scoring chance and made no mistake about it.
Yeah, it was Lowry starting off overtime with Samberg as well, going up, against Ovechkin, who's so dangerous every time he gets the puck. And they were weaving around, for a little over a minute there. I don't think they had any crazy chances. And finally, it was Jacob Chychrun who whiffed on a shot, went back behind the net. I think it was Adam Lowry, right, who touched it to Samberg, who
that was Adam Lowry.
Was it Adam Lowry who touched it to Samberg, right? And okay, get off the ice. Let's get some fresh legs on. You're thinking, everyone's thinking that except for Nikolai Ehlers. Like, no. This is the time where I'm gonna bust my ass to center. And it was Samberg, a beautiful bank pass right on the tape. And I don't know how many players in the league can shoot it in top corner in stride. We saw him do it the other night with a slap shot against Buffalo, and what a beautiful goal that was. But to do it in overtime on Logan Thompson, incredible. And I mean, the celebration after, just looking at the crowd with his arms out. I don't know, the
so awesome.
Jesus pose, just saying, hey, look at this. I mean, there's so many comments coming out. We're seeing epic call from Edmonds and from Dan, saying what a pass by Samberg, what a shot, what a celebration. But there's also comments on our Instagram saying, just pay this man. Give the man what he wants. Nikolai Ehlers is, don't want to bring contracts in and talking about this great game. But I think that is hanging in the back of this season. The storyline with the Jets saying, hey, Nikolai Ehlers, he's a UFA. We don't know what's going to happen. But what an incredible play. And we, again, saw him playing with new line mates yesterday and got it done in overtime.
Yeah, I mean, we joked about Lowry getting the assist. We did have the WST parlay, which for the first time ever cashed all 3 legs on the winning goal. It was Jets to win, Ehlers to score, and Lowry to get a point. And it all happened on that OT winner. So a few of you were extra happy after that one came in. Listen, it was impossible not to talk about Ehlers and just I mean, that was just one of those moments where you realized, and Paul called it, I mean, basking in admiring the adulation of the fans. And that's exactly what it was. And it would be heartbreaking, I think, for a huge portion of the Jets fan base if Nikolai Ehlers didn't continue on as a Jet. Now, again, we don't really know what he is thinking about. I mean, this hasn't been something that's been it's certainly been talked about on this show and amongst Jet fans. But I would say this, nights like last night, and hopefully many more to come in the playoffs, I think the more of that happens, hopefully the more likely is that Nick will stick around with another contract with the Winnipeg Jets. We also found out a new nickname for Ehlers. Let's grab the jacket ceremony, Remo, if you can. This was after the game in the locker room when the jackets were handed out amongst the players after a huge win in the 1-versus-1 matchup in the NHL.
This one's going to the decor, career high points. Yeah. Wow.
Hey, congrats on clinching playoffs there, fellas. That's a hell of an accomplishment. Way to get the job done.
Yeah. Kenny said clinch at home. That's a hell of a job against a good team, boys. Happy big goal, but Lars. Unbelievable.
Yeah, guys, great job. Let's finish these last 10 off right. Be ready for the playoffs.
Yeah!
Can we start the sign Lars movement, Remis? I don't know where the Lars comes from. I had a good chuckle about it, and whether we call him Nick, Nikolai, or Lars, man, he's playing great hockey right now, and you hope that they can keep him around after this season.
Yeah, I don't know if when he was a kid, he got compared to the other Danish player in the game last night, Lars Eller, on the Capitals, or is it a reference to, maybe one of the most famous people from Denmark, Lars Ulrich from Metallica? I have no idea, but yes, Lars. We've heard Jimmy, or Big Jimmy, Little Jimmy, Perfetti, and Sandberg in the post-game jacket ceremony. And everyone is rating Lars.
Sign Lars. I almost tweeted that out last night.
Sign Lars. So, hey, I love it. Shout out to the Jets for doing such a great job with Runway, including us with that. And, you saw Tyler with the camera there in the corner behind Sandberg. But, yeah, these videos give us a nice glimpse into the locker room. And Lars, there you go. Sign Lars. That's the new slogan of the show, right?
Sign Lars.
Hashtag sign Lars. That's it.
Listen, Ehlers obviously was the overtime hero. Great game from Connor Hellebuck. And how about that snipe from Mason Appleton? Like, he scored his first in 12 games, his first point in 8. You knew that this was, an important time for Appleton. I mean, he's playing with Adam Lowry. Now Ehlers is on the line. I mean, there's obviously things that he needs to do first. But, I mean, they need players like Appleton to step up and be able to contribute some offense. And holy smokes, did he make no mistake. That's one of the nicest goals he's ever scored as a Winnipeg Jet last night, Reem.
Yeah, a lot of talk coming into this game. Mason Appleton on line 2 of the Winnipeg Jets. The guy hadn't scored, was his first goal last night in 12 games. He didn't have a point in 8 games, and what a massive goal that was, just after a power play, seconds dying down. And yeah, he kind of him and Ehlers, very similar spot now, different handedness. Ehlers is the left shot and Appleton's a right shot, so he's got a longer angle there. But again, beautifully placed shot past Logan Thompson, and that was certainly a big one. And he was asked after the game about just everyone needing to step up with Gabe Vilardi out, and they went with this more balanced approach in the lines, having Lowry, Appleton, Ehlers, and then Perfetti, Nemesnikov, and Niederreiter. And you had Appleton step up, and Perfetti is a guy whose game is just getting stronger as it goes on. Yeah, he's on the board again. Hustler, he's got a 3-game point streak, so it was pretty...
let me just stop you there for a second. We'll get to... I'm going to talk about this with Murat when he joins us. I loved Perfetti's game last night. And listen, Paul Maurice, I always think back, and we always had a chuckle, Paul Maurice talking about, it's a man's game, and these guys, they are men. This was a man's game last night. I mean, listen, those were big dudes. He's there battling with Tom Wilson, with Protas, and showing absolutely not an ounce of backing down. I am more optimistic about Cole Perfetti in the playoffs than I have been at any point this year. And I've talked all year long about how I'm impressed at the drive, the fight, the competitiveness that he's shown. This was a great, great play for it. And there you have it. Cole Perfetti has turned into a man this season. Not afraid to go to the dirty areas. There's Joey Panks. And listen, Cole Perfetti, fairly or unfairly, he was on the line before with Nikolai Ehlers, and Ehlers, with all his brilliance, I think gets a lot of the credit for being that guy that's driving a line. We'll talk about this with Mike Kelly coming up in a minute, but, with Niederreiter and Vlad Perfetti, they spent a lot of time in the other team's end. Cole took it to the net a couple times, and he's got such brilliant playmaking and passing vision that, the big question was, can he hang with, the bigger, tougher players, when it comes to playoffs? And I thought he was great last night, even though didn't end up as one of the 3 stars or wasn't all over the score sheet. So a lot of really good things to come out. And Remis, just before we get to Coach Arniel, while incredibly impressed with the way the Jets played, I came away equally impressed with the Washington Capitals. That team is going to be a hell of a tough out in the playoffs. And I mean, with the size they bring, and listen, I thought Spencer Carberry, it was really interesting the way the teams kind of controlled portions of the game. I thought that the second period, after they went into the room, Washington kind of did carry the play and had the majority of chances and shots for a good period. I thought the Jets did, even with the 2-1 lead in the third period. Now, obviously, Ovechkin, I mean, there's a reason why he's going to be the all-time goal-scoring leader. He wasn't that noticeable for most of the night. And then with 4 odd minutes left, just finds a tiny little bit of space. They get him the puck, and boom, the game is tied right now. So, I mean, it was I was away when the Jets played the Caps the first time. I was sort of following it afar, but to be able to be there last night and to see both of those teams, I mean, you understand why these teams have the records that they do after a game like that last night.
Yeah, I think, and the Jets talking about knowing that, hey, we need to bring our A game against a team like Washington, and maybe, mentally, first game after a road trip, a game like Sunday afternoon against Buffalo, maybe you think, hey, we can take our foot off the gas a little, but they knew they had to, play at their best, and you've seen it this year when they go up against top teams. I mean, the Jets' home record this year is pretty incredible, but Florida, Dallas, Washington really brought it for 60+, and I did look at the money puck deserved to win-o-meter. It was basically, a 50-50 game, and it would get that's what it is, 2 great teams going at it, 2 games into overtime, and the Jets sweep Washington, Huss. First time ever they sweep the season series. 2-0, pretty incredible. And the Jets, fastest the Jets franchise has ever clinched a playoff spot, 72 games, beating the 75 and 17-18, 18-19. And the Jets' overtime record, I was talking to someone over the weekend, like, yeah, I just live bet the Jets when they get to overtime every time this year, 11-4 in overtime. And I mean, players like
when the Jets get 1, they usually get 2, and they did it again last night. And again, it's important, I think, not to put too much. Like, if the Jets had lost in OT, I think, there wouldn't have been the excitement of the winner and all that. But I think we should be here talking about not necessarily the result in overtime, but the 60-minute performance. And because, of course, when we get to the postseason, there's not going to be 3-on-3. It's going to be who scores next at 5-on-5. And at 5-on-5, both of these teams, I think, showed why they are Stanley Cup contenders right now. Let's hear from the coach. Scott Arniel spoke after the game and started off by talking about the OT winner by Nick Ehlers. Lars.
Was there a part of you thinking, Nick, get off the ice as the play goes the other way? Because he had been out there for a while, but him staying out there ended up being, you guys get rewarded for it.
Yeah, it was that, but they also, Washington had 4 guys on the ice. I don't know if you saw it, but So if you missed the net and it went around, we were probably going to get a power play because they had 4 guys. So I guess he had a little bit in the tank left over and just burned down. What a great shot. So great to see.
Yeah, and a great pass, too, by Dylan Semberg. Again, a guy we talked a few games ago who hadn't seen a lot of overtime, but he looks pretty comfortable out there at 3-on-3.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of on the fly learning how to do it. We got hemmed in there with them getting possession of the puck, but those guys did a good job keeping it to the outside. And finally you just wait for your opportunity to get that puck back. And I like the way, Sammy Fire recognized it, that they were where they were at, and just a great way to end that great game.
All right, so that was the OT winner last night. Here's Arnie's thoughts just on the game overall between the top 2 teams in the league.
That was a heavyweight battle right there. That really was. Both teams, even though one's from the east, one's from the west, it's like we play each other 8 times a year. There was a lot of trash talk going on. There were some big hits. There was a lot happening, and I think that both teams recognize that. You want to be number one, and it was a great game. I just thought punch counter punch kind of going on all night.
Oh, as far as being number 1 in the league, obviously our main concern right now is the Jets holding on to first place in the Central and the West. But with the point that Washington got from the overtime loss, they stay 1 point up on the Jets and do have 1 game in hand right now, 103 and 102 in the NHL. Then the Dallas Stars, 3rd overall in the league, 2nd in the Central at 94 points. They're in Edmonton tonight. Of course, new look lines without Gabriel Velarde in the lineup. Here's what Arniel had to say about the 4 units that he threw out last night.
It had a little bit to do with their lineup. I knew I wanted to go with Lowry and Apple against Wilson. And Dubois, some big bodies. And I just felt I don't think we had anybody that was going to line up against Tom Wilson and be able to, I just thought that maybe Fly would be the guy. I thought that maybe that's a situation at speed against, Tom's a great player. And it just, I just, having the opportunity to make them defend and play in their end, I thought we did that with that line. They had some real good zone time, and they kept the Dubois line down in their end of the rink, and that goes a long way. And Fly, being a puck possession guy that he is, kind of helps drive that a little bit. And then the other side too, with Vladdy's line and Fetz, Nino again, they did a great job themselves. Whether they were against Strome or whoever they were against, did a great job of doing what they need to do as a line. I thought Nino did a great job of getting to the net and playing heavy as well.
Now, I'm going to ask, Mike Kelly about this, but here's just Arniel's thoughts on the Ehlers' fit with Lowry and Appleton.
Well, he recognizes who he's playing with. Guys with that kind of skill, if you're playing with maybe a couple other top-end skill guys, you're going to be, do some other things. You're playing against 2 guys like Apple and Lau that are going to, probably dump it in and go get it, and then he is the support off of that. And he knows to get to holes, to get to spots when he's playing with those kind of guys. I think that he just, he's a veteran player. He's been around a while and knows how to play in a lot of situations.
All right, I see the Prickfetti in the chat. Cole Perfetti. You just heard Arnie's thoughts on that line overall. Here's what he had to say about Cole's game in particular.
No, again, he's not the biggest body. I think he had a great hit there in the 3rd period, right in center ice there. He had the puck a lot. I liked the way he held onto it. A couple times he drove. He came out of the corners, took it to the front of the net. Those are great things. Those are all the things that we've talked about, him kind of evolving as a player. And that's the stuff in the playoffs that you have to do. You have to go into those greasy areas, and I thought he did. He's been really good at that.
Listen, we got a couple more quickly from the coach, and hey, the one thing that did happen at the end of the 3rd period was that video showing that you can put an X beside the Winnipeg Jets name. They're going to the Stanley Cup playoffs. Here's Arnie's thoughts on that.
You have to be appreciative of what we've done, obviously, and at the start of the year, our first goal, we have a few goals, but our first goal was to eliminate 8 teams, and we did that, obviously, after 60 minutes. So, you have to applaud our players for, doing that, and would have liked to have done it against Buffalo, but at the same time, and to win the game and get that extra point is just sort of the cream on the top.
All right, now one more clip from Arnie. As far as the Caps go, I mean, Dubois got his ass booed on the building pretty much every time he touched the puck. He was everywhere in the first period. I thought his effectiveness and his noticeability kind of went down as the game went on. And Tom Wilson was a pain in the ass all night. But Alex Ovechkin is the star of the show with the Washington Capitals. And they said he didn't do a lot for the majority of the game. And then needing a goal late in the third period, it's on his stick, and then it's in the back of the net. And Scott Arniel knows a lot about Ovi from his time with them in D.C. Here's what the coach had to say about Ovechkin getting .889 last night.
He came by the bench and gave me the biggest smirk. So I'm glad he got the goal in the sense, or getting closer to his goal. Excuse me, I'm not glad he got the goal. I'm glad he's getting close to whatever that number is. At the end of the day, that's him. It doesn't take much. The puck is on his stick, off his stick. I thought we did a really good job for most of the game of trying to limit him. A lot of chances to get a few on the power play, but I thought we did a really good job of staying over top of him. He doesn't need much time or space, and at the end of the day, we got the 2 points. It is what it is. I was kind of hoping that we could finish that one off in a 2-1 game, but at the end of the day, we did a pretty good job on him.
Did you get a chance to give him a smirk at the end of the game?
I didn't get to see him. He was farther down the bench, so I might see him later.
All right, so there's a pretty happy Scott Arniel after last night's win over the Jets. And we'll have much more on this game tonight with Murat coming up in a few minutes, Mike Kelly coming up in just a second from NHL Network. Before we do that, though, spring and summer are just around the corner, everybody, and many of you might be planning a move. If you are planning a move, hit up our friends at Rolly's Transfer, the most trusted name in moving in Manitoba, family-owned and operated for over 60 years. You can check out Rolly's amazing website for details on all of their services. Might even see a pic of the Rolly's Winnipeg Sports Talk truck out there, which is already on the road. But what you're going to do is click on that request an estimate feature and put in the promo code WST for a special discount for Winnipeg Sports Talk listeners on moving services and moving supplies. And then let them know when and where you're planning on moving and what needs to go. And the friendly staff at Rolly's will turn it around quickly with a great quote and get you set up for the white glove treatment that Rolly's has been famous for now into their 7th decade. For your next move, make it Rolly's. Find out more or request an estimate today online over at Rollies.com. Well, you got a lot of spring cleaning happening around your place, on your property. What about your mouth? It's a great time to not forget about the dentist. And our pal Dr. Terry and his great staff at St. Vital Dental Center at 167 St. Anne's Road are waiting for you. Full dental services for patients from 6 months to 99 plus. They've been doing it for generations of Winnipeggers. And now with a beautiful new location at St. Anne's with free parking in the back room, right behind the building, and an incredible staff waiting to serve you. For all your dental needs, St. Vital Dental Center is waiting for you. Pop by and see them. Tell them the gang at Winnipeg Sports Talk sent you. You can find out all the information on everything St. Vital Dental Center can do for you and your family online at stvitaldental.ca. A few people probably toasted that win last night with a drink or a cocktail. If you're thinking whiskey, though, make it Canadian and make it Canada's best Canadian club. The official spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, who were represented in the game last night. And, of course, a great supporter of ours for years. It'll be a minute before we're at the Princess Auto Stadium enjoying CC and Gingers at Bomber games in the summer. But in the meantime, pop by your local Manitoba liquor markets and get Canada's #1 Canadian whiskey, Canadian Club, along with Canadian Club 100% Rye and Canadian Club Classic at your local Manitoba liquor marts. And just before we bring in Mike Kelly, shout out to Donnie and the gang down at Manitoba Battery, your local option for batteries of all makes, models, shapes, sizes. Most importantly, at the best prices in town. That's right. You can shop local, save money, beating the pants off the big box stores, and take advantage of Manitoba Battery's incredible service where they'll deliver those batteries to you for free anywhere inside the perimeter with any purchase over $60. It's just that easy. You can pop by and see them at Logan Avenue or their new location on Dovercourt Drive, or find out more, order online at manitobabattery.com. All right, Murat coming up in a few minutes. Right now, though, let's check in on everything going on around the league with one of the best in the biz, our pal Mike Kelly from the NHL Network. Mike, what's going on? Great to have you back on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's good to catch up with you as well. A fun time of year. We're getting some good races in both conferences, and you Jets fans out there, you don't have to worry about trying to battle your way into the playoffs. But I tell you, that Central Division, those top three teams is going to make for good playoff series, that's for sure.
Well, I was going to sort of get into some of the playoff races that we've got right now, but I mean, listen, I'd be lying if I said that some Jet fans hadn't been stressing about finishing the job and winning the Central Division with the way Dallas is coming on right now, because the alternative is not a good one. And regardless of how it ends up, Mike, that 2-3 series in the Central is going to be, it's going to leave a hell of a good hockey team on the sidelines going into round 2.
It is. I'm actually just looking at our updated playoff projections from our model at Sport Logic. And the good news for Jets fans, we've got Dallas facing Colorado at 86% likelihood. Winnipeg winning the division, 88% likelihood. So they do have a nice lead. I mean, obviously, you lose a guy like Gabe Vilardi week to week, right? That's no joke. I think I'd be really surprised if Winnipeg didn't win the division because of the lead that they've built for themselves. It might narrow a little bit, but that's massive when you consider that one of Dallas or Colorado, if they play each other, is going to be gone, and also one of Dallas or Colorado, whoever goes to the next round, will have had to go through that series. So huge advantage for the Winnipeg Jets to close this out, get enough points at least down the stretch so that they can win that division.
Well, and I got to tell you, I mean, it felt like the playoffs last night at Canada Life Center. I mean, you have Ovechkin and the Capitals coming in, a matchup with the number 1 and 2 teams in the league. But at the same time, I mean, anybody can win on any given night. The Jets had just lost to the Buffalo Sabres, and they really did come out with a performance that kind of, I think, made a statement that they are ready for the postseason, even without Gabe Vilardi. And very interesting, I mean, all new lines. Nikolai Ehlers playing with Adam Lowry. And we've talked about Ehlers before, Mike, but I wanted just to get your thoughts on the concept of a player like Lowry, who's defensively responsible, a great two-way player, and then having a guy like Ehlers on with them. They actually had some pretty nice results when they played for a brief time before Lowry got hurt. Sort of seems like this is the way it's going to go forward for the next little while, at least. I mean, just thoughts on what Ehlers can do with players like Lowry and Appleton.
Well, he opens up ice, right, for other guys, just because he's able to draw people in. He's able to beat other players one-on-one. He's so elusive as a skater. One of the better players, frankly, in the league at weaving through the neutral zone and getting the puck into the offensive zone. And you can let the Lowrys and the Appletons of the world battle for pucks and sustain O-zone time. But just because of how dynamic a skater Ehlers is, and a good playmaker as well, and obviously he can score, he can open up a little bit more offense than I think what those guys are used to seeing on their line, which is nice. Lowry's big, physical, like you talk about defensively, a solid player. He can help Ehlers too in some areas. I think one of the nice luxuries that the Winnipeg Jets have had this year is that top line when Vilardi's been in the lineup. They have played together so much more than any other line in the league, like all year virtually, right? And it have been a consistent good line. They score a ton. You know, they give up a bit, but again, there's such the chemistry on that line and what each guy brings to it. It works so well that when you have to go away from it, you got to try to figure other things out. In a perfect world, you've got Vilardi there, let alone what he means to your power play in front of the net. But look, Ehlers is a good player. I know Jets fans for a lot of years under previous coaches have wanted him to get more top six minutes, top line minutes. Coaches have pushed back against that. So that's one of the interesting wrinkles I'm looking forward to watching down the stretch here, as well as with Vilardi out, just how does that affect everybody else and who can step into certain roles and maybe who can't.
Well, and what it's seemingly what Scott Arniel did in the absence of Gabe Vilardi is sort of make a more balanced lineup. Moved Alex Iafallo, who has been, as versatile as any player on the roster, up with Scheifele and Connor. We mentioned Ehlers playing with Lowry and Appleton. Ehlers have been with Cole Perfetti, and they've been very productive for the last number of games. Perfetti now playing with Vlad and Nino. And I got to say, Mike, coming out of last night, for a guy that was smaller, that was not even in the lineup at times at the end of last season, I'm not sure anyone has made more strides in their game and their competitiveness than Cole Perfetti. And it really did seem like he's ready for the playoffs, and he's driving a line offensively right now, it seems.
Yeah, that would be so big for Winnipeg. He's a player, as you know, that thinks the game really well. But yeah, like you say, Washington is such a good litmus test because not only are they really good, but they are big and they are physical. And that's the type of team that I think could have success in the playoffs because of the way that they're built. But the type of team that Winnipeg, if you're going up, let's not put them into the second round yet because we know about this team recently, unfortunately. If they get through the first round, because they do get a wild card team, I'm like, St. Louis, look how well they're playing. Who wants to play them in the first round right now? But if you do get there and you get a Colorado or a Dallas in the next round, you're getting big physical skill, all that stuff. And when you go forward in the playoffs, a lot of times, opposing teams, if they're going to circle a player or two that they want to try to take advantage of in a playoff series, they're not going to circle Kyle Connor or Mark Scheifele. Those guys are going to do what they do. You're going to circle someone like a Cole Perfetti and say, let's push him out of the game. Let's make him a non-factor. So to see a performance, whether it's last night, stringing a few together down the stretch here against certain types of teams that he can put together, kind of can be a potential X factor type of guy who you can get some production from if top level guys kind of saw each other off, right?
Yeah, well, it's so far so good. They certainly stepped up last night. And again, you mentioned Washington. That level of competition was exactly what you'll get at the top levels of the playoffs. I was saying to you before, after the game, just talking about, a bunch of the things that happened, we got talking about the Capitals overall. And I just imagined an Eastern Conference final between Washington and Florida. You want to talk about these teams have just played some pretty wild games as of late. They're teams that can do it all. They can score, but they can absolutely match you physically. And yeah, I think that'd be a huge treat for hockey fans if we get it.
I agree. That would be heavy hockey. Someone's coming out of there limping their way into the Stanley Cup final, which maybe is good news for a Western Conference team. But it's kind of funny, isn't it, that like for so long this season, Winnipeg has been at the top of the West, Washington's been at the top of the East, and they're probably going to finish that way. Who's picking them to win a Stanley Cup? Nobody really, right? You wonder, do they get the respect they deserve? Do they need to earn that respect first? Because Winnipeg's still trying to figure out their playoff success, and Washington limped in last year with a terrible goal differential, and they were bouncing 5 games, I think, off the top of my head. So maybe they're not. Maybe it's kind of good for both teams that no one's putting the burden of the world on them to go out and win a cup this year. And even though they are the 2 number 1 teams. But I'm with you where I look at Washington and it's like, where are the holes? They can score. They've got skilled players. They've got depth on the blue line. They've got depth at forward. They've got a goalie who's going to be a top 3 for the Vezina Trophy this year. And yeah, they're built to kind of win in the playoffs. If you just look at the size that they've got on their team, which we know is important that time of year. And the Metro is not what it was last year or in recent years. Like that used to be the juggernaut division for a while. Rangers might not get in. Devils are banged up. I've never really seen them as a huge playoff threat. I don't. And maybe they've taken a step back this season, even from what they've been. So Washington, I think, has a great pathway to get to that Eastern final. Maybe it's Florida. I really like Tampa Bay. I think they're kind of flying under the radar and have in comparison to some other teams. So Caps have a great path, I think, this season to get to a conference final. And yeah, then it gets heavy.
Well, bringing it back to the West, and listen, I'm with you. No one just gets advanced to the second round. Even if the Jets are able to accomplish their goal, which is number 1 in the Central, number 1 in the West, you're going to be playing a good hockey team. And the St. Louis Blues right now, Mike, it actually seemed like it was Calgary, Vancouver, St. Louis battling for this 8th spot. How safe are the Wild in 7th right now?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I mean, they've been missing some key guys for a while. How long can they kind of hang on to that? Again, if I just look at the playoff odds that I've got in front of me from our model, we've got Minnesota 92% to get in. Yeah, and you look at St. Louis, they're 63% now. I mean, they've been under 50% for quite a while, but they've won 7 in a row, and they're bumping up now. Catching, I don't know how much good it does you whether you finish in that first or second wildcard spot, because you're getting, I believe Vegas will win their division, and they're playing so well, and they're built for playoffs. And Winnipeg's no joke either. So either way, you're getting, if you're the St. Louis Blues, I don't know that there's a preference in terms of who you want to play there. What I do know is who wants to play St. Louis, because coming out of the Four Nations break, I kind of focused on 2 teams that I thought had really good underlying numbers heading into that break. Record hadn't quite matched it, but it was Tampa Bay and it was St. Louis. If St. Louis could get goaltending. Binnington showed us what he could do in the Four Nations. He's been fine. Hofer's a good goalie there as well. So that's, again, if you're a Jets fan, you believe in your team, and they should, and all the rest of it. But St. Louis is on an absolute heater right now, and it is backed up by a lot of good numbers that support them playing very good hockey since Jim Montgomery took over.
Speaking of St. Louis, I saw earlier today, my buddy Dustin Nielsen in Edmonton was tweeting, and listen, that the Dylan Holloway situation is still a touchy subject in Edmonton. He's got 8 goals and 20 points in the 17 games since the Four Nations, and you look at what's happened with Edmonton. I mean, when we look back at last offseason, specifically with those 2 players, will that be an example of cap mismanagement that is referenced for a long time that allowed Edmonton to get, pickpocketed basically of 2 really talented young players at the expense of expensive older UFA veterans?
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know about cap mismanagement. I mean, there was easily money there to sign one of them, and I think it was probably Holloway. If you were going to just not do both, I think you bring back Holloway, Goldberg goes, you have Holloway, right? I was shocked that they let both of them go. And they're, make no mistake, they could have brought both of them back. It wasn't an impossible scenario to match both offer sheets and on you go. They elect to let both of them go. They had the reasons for that. And you can look at the future too, what it sets up for a next contract as well. But I think if you're Edmonton, you are in a we are winning a Stanley Cup right now mode. You just went to the Stanley Cup final, Game 7. Holloway, you mentioned the point streak he's on in his last 20 games, 17 games, whatever. He's been one of their more consistent forwards all year, and he's producing at a great rate. Goldberg, you can argue he's their best defenseman. So think about what they just got, right? A highly productive forward, one of their more consistent forwards game in, game out, and a guy who, whether you want to label him as their number 1D or not, he's one of their 2 best defensemen. So I don't know how, at the time, I was shocked they didn't match one of them. And a lot of people, I think, were shocked they didn't match both of them. And, the veterans they bring in clearly have not kind of matched the production that those guys had going out. So it was a mistake in the end. And, you kind of question some of the logic behind it at the time as well.
Well, to me, it was what got them there. I mean, they went all crazy on July 1, and they're signing Jeff Skinner, and they're signing Arvidsson. The bottom line is they would have been able to sign both of these guys for significantly less than they ended up getting from St. Louis because of the nature of the offer sheet. And, it's sort of blown up on them. And again, it just puts that much more on the backs of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, assuming that those 2 players get back in. We'll get to the East because I do want to ask you about that playoff race in a minute. But while we bring up Edmonton, Leon Draisaitl, Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon, and Connor Hellebuck seem to be the top 3 when we're talking about the Hart Trophy. Where are you at on the Hart right now, Mike, as we get down to the final games of the regular season? And could this be a year a goaltender finally gets the award again?
I don't think a goalie's going to get it. I think it would be criminal if Connor Hellebuck wasn't a finalist. So, yeah, top 3. Look at the game. Look how many games he plays, right? So, one of the things you can look at who's leading in save percentage or goals against or, advanced stats like goals saved above expected, different things like that. Some guys meet I think 24 games is the cutoff right now to meet the NHL criteria. Let's say you played 30. Well, look at what Connor Hellebuck's played, right? His numbers should go down to a point just on the sheer volume of games he's had to play. And they're still the best of the best. Look, there's not much of a sample to draw on when he's not playing, but the Jets are a basically 500 team in the handful of games Hellebuck hasn't played this year. They're the best team in the Western Conference when he's in the net, being the best goalie in the world. I don't know how you couldn't have him as a top 3 guy, especially in a year where it's not like you got Connor putting up 160 points and McKinnon 150. Like, there's not these guys having these monster years we've seen recently. I think you hit the nail on the head. If you had to do 3 right now in any order, Draisaitl, McKinnon, Hellebuck, those are the 3 to me. I think depending on what happens with Calgary, because we know so many voters like did they make the playoffs or not as a criteria. I always find that kind of funny because what if the team misses the playoffs by a point? That guy you were going to say, yeah, he's got to be up for this award if they make the playoffs. What if they make it by a point? All of a sudden he's disqualified. So I don't love that argument. But look at Calgary hanging around right now and look at what Dustin Wolf has meant to that team. Hart Trophy, player deemed most valuable to his team. Nothing about best player in the league. I don't love the way that award is the definition of that award, but that's what it is. What has Dustin Wolf meant to that team? A ton. So I'm not saying top 3. I'm saying consideration for top 5, which is what voters fill out, a ballot of 5 players. He's another goalie I would have in and around the conversation. But yeah, I don't know how you couldn't have Hellebuck top 3 right now.
Like, do you think that Hellebuck is not going to get it just because of perceived bias against goalies when getting on the award? Or do you think McKinnon or McDavid is more deserving of it, or Draisaitl?
Look, I hate having to even make the argument because you're one guy is doing something entirely different than another guy.
Yeah.
Like, how do you compare a quarterback and a field goal kicker? Obviously, one's more important to the success of your team. But then you can make that argument about a goalie, I guess, right? So I don't know. Like, the thing I hear the most when it comes to voting for these things is goalies have their award, which I think is BS. Like, yeah, they have their awards. So do forwards. So do defensemen. What are I guess how you would drill it down, what are the Avalanche without Nathan McKinnon? A playoff team? I think so. Maybe a wild card team, I guess. What are the Oilers without Draisaitl? You still have McDavid and the rest of it. So what are the Jets without Hellebuck? Hard to say because they'd go out and get another guy they think can be a starting goalie, right? It's not like you just roll with your backup and then the next guy. Hellebuck probably has the best argument because a goalie should have the best argument in that argument. But that's the thing. Like, you could tell me for sure no to Connor Hellebuck. You could tell me for sure yes. I don't know how you argue it because they're 2 different positions.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're biased here. We're kind of pulling for the recognition for a guy that's going to win his 3rd Vezina.
Yeah.
If goalies are eligible to win this award, the year where a guy is leading the league significantly in wins, in shutouts, in save percentage, in goals against average, and in minutes played. I mean, if not this year, when?
When? Well, I mean, what do you want to do for context? You want to go back to the last time a goalie won it, which was Theodore, right? 2002, I believe.
I mean, that's
a lot of people don't like the way that voting went because Iginla was left off ballots by certain voting members that wanted Theodore to win the award.
It was a little scandalous.
But that's the last time a goalie won it. So what did other players do in the year that the goalie won versus what the goalie did that year? I guess you could look at it that way and try to draw a comparison there. I don't know.
Was that the year Jamie Benn won the scoring title? And it was a very, very depressed year. Reem, did you have that?
I think that was later. One sec.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I remember Ben won it, I think, with 87 points. I think, maybe your producer Michael can check this out. I remember something like Tavares and the Islanders were in a playoff race, so they needed to win the last game. The Stars were out of it. So Ben just went on let's set up Jamie Benn night. And he had, I think, 3 or 4 points in the last game to win the scoring title by 8 points. I have that memory for some reason. I could be hallucinating all of it, but I think it was something like that. Anyways, yeah, you want to vote Hellebuck first, I'm with you. Go for it. You got no argument for me. And I think you bring up a good point. If not this year, based on what he's done, like when else would a goalie win it? He checks all the boxes. The argument I'd push back on is if he was doing this playing 47 games, right? But that's not the argument. He's going to play more than anybody. So,
I mean, another thing that he's top. It was Carey Price that won the Hart in 2014-15 in that year.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I guess Tavares and Ovechkin were the other nominees. Shout out to Remo for popping that up. Well, hey, listen, I mentioned the Montreal Canadiens. They're in a wild card spot. Mike, dig into the Sportlogiq numbers. How is that race for 8th? How safe are the Senators, first of all, in 7th? They lost to Buffalo last night, and it looks pretty packed up, although the Rangers have played a couple games. What do the numbers tell us for who's most likely to get in the final spot out east?
Oh, I know Sens fans are panicking. I live in Ottawa, so I interact with them at the rink and stuff like that, and I have friends here that are Sens fans. 95%. All right, so they should be comfortable, but if you know anything about the organization recently and how it's performed, there is no comfort until the X is beside the team logo on NHL.com. I mean, you lose to Buffalo. It's the third time in 3 games they've lost to Buffalo. That's the confounding thing about this team is they can go out on a given night and beat Florida or Tampa or Toronto. They beat Toronto 5 straight games going back to last season. But you can't beat the Buffaloes of the world. So that's why you are an inconsistent team and you are battling for a playoff spot. But they should be safe. You got Detroit coming up. I mean, win some games, you're good. Montreal, 41%. Might not sound like a ton to Habs fans, except for the fact that the teams that are chasing them are well below that. So 41% is actually pretty good. We've got the Islanders at 25%, Blue Jackets 22%, Rangers 15%. So Montreal should be in a decent spot. The thing about all these teams, though, is, they're all here for a reason, because any one of them can lose 4 in a row, no problem, right? So we'll see. But to me, Ottawa is all but in, should be. Last one's still up for grabs, but it's Montreal's race to lose. And, the top line for them has done so well for a long stretch now, playing together. Nick Suzuki, I hear arguments all the time about, like, is this guy really a number 1 center? Can you really win with Nick Suzuki as your number 1 center? Yeah, he's a number 1 center. And you want a history lesson, go back and look at some of those Canadiens teams in the 70s and the cups that they won and look who their number 1 center were. You don't need a Connor McDavid or a Nathan McKinnon to win a Stanley Cup. Nick Suzuki's a phenomenal player. Defensively, they've gotten a little bit better. Kind of macro, since 4 Nations, you want to look at the last month or whatever, that's something that's been helping drive some of their success as well.
Hey, one more on just where the numbers are. We talked about the Central and how the 2-3 matchup is going to be an incredible one. You can say the same thing in the Atlantic. And I mean, we speak today, Toronto and Florida have the exact same record. Wins, losses, overtime, lost points. Tampa is 1 back. Who's most likely to win that division, Mike? Because I would say, much like the Jets predicament, there's a huge carrot to winning that division and avoiding one of those other top 3 teams in round number 1.
No question. I'd say maybe more in the West, just because, again, you don't want that St. Louis team right now. Like Ottawa and Montreal, they're going to pose some problems in some areas, but you win that division, you should beat one of those teams. Florida, look, and so our model takes into account things like obviously games remaining, the points you have, but also strength of schedule, also the underlying numbers of the team in question and what we think they're going to do on a game-to-game basis. We got Florida at 42% to win the division, Toronto at 32%, Tampa at 26%. So it should be Florida, and then that should set up a Toronto-Tampa, which we have as 42% likely to occur in the first round right now, which is the most of any matchup for those 2 individual teams. So, not fun for either one of those teams because it's a difficult opponent. I would pick Tampa Bay to win that series. I'm sure Tampa would love to win the division, though, and try to avoid it. I'm sure all 3 teams would love to do that. So, the good thing about a potential Florida winning their division, Ottawa finishing in wild card 1, you're more than likely going to get the Kachucks against each other in the first round. That would be fun to watch.
Yeah, Ottawa versus Florida or Ottawa versus Toronto. Sign me up for that. It would be phenomenal for fans.
Either way, I mean, we'll see how things go down the stretch here. And I reserve the right to change my opinion on a day-to-day basis until we get there. But I'm not picking Toronto over Ottawa in a playoff series easily right now. Like, I'd have to drill down, but I might lean towards Ottawa.
I mean, certainly based on their recent success head-to-head, I would certainly favor the Senators right now, and they'll have a ton of energy if they can finish the job and get in. Mike, This has been a real fun rip around the league. Thanks so much for jumping on. I'll direct people over to your X feed at Mike Kelly NHL, but just quickly tease what you've been digging into of the new trend of 5 forward power plays right now. Are we going to be seeing more of that?
Yeah, it was funny. Like I did a big kind of breakdown on this on NHL Network. God, it's like 3 years ago now, looking back at it, which time flies, man. I'm old. I don't know what's going on. I'm like, oh, I did that last year. No, that was 3 years ago. But back then, like Florida was doing it a little bit because Ekblad was out and it was just what they thought was their best option. Barkov was the quarterback. Montreal was doing a little bit because they were kind of out of the playoffs and I think they were just tinkering around with it, to be honest. But you didn't really see any teams doing it, and you still don't much. Some teams have tinkered again a little bit this year. Toronto's been rolling with this thing, though. Morgan Riley, I like him as a defenseman. I know people are kind of on him for having a bit of a down year. I think he's still a good defenseman. He's not and has never been a premier offensive defenseman. He just isn't. So they're going with Marner at the point. Matthews kind of on the right side, Nylander on the left, Tavares and Nye stacking in the middle. And look, since the trade deadline, it's been the best unit in the league. Since the Four Nations break, so going on in a bit over a month, it's been a top 3 unit in the league. Toronto's really found its power play. And my whole stance on 5-unit power plays is forever it was 3 forwards, 2 defensemen. Why would you do it any different? Right, until someone was smart enough to think outside the box and say, well, I bet you we could score a bit more with 4 forwards. And that's exactly what happened. So now it almost universally shifted to 4 forwards, 1 defenseman. Why would it be any crazier to say go with 5 forwards? Unless you've got Lane Hudson or Cale Makar or Quinn Hughes or Josh Moore, whatever it's going to be. Just put the best 5 out there. Who gives a damn what position they play to run your power play? And a lot of teams, I think right now, don't have that guy as a defenseman. Where it's like, why not throw another forward out? The argument is, well, what are we going to give up? And again, the sample's too small to draw a definitive conclusion in terms of the chances you allow. From the small sample, it's not worse. So again, I do think it's something that will take longer than it should to catch on. I don't think it'll ever be as popular as 4 forwards, 1 defenseman. But Toronto's showing, look, they can make that work right now.
Folks, you can check out the entire piece over at Mike's feed at Mike Kelly NHL. And, of course, you can catch him on NHL Network and, of course, Amazon as well. Mike, thanks so much for doing this. Always love chopping it up with you. It's going to be a fun next couple weeks, and then it's go time for the Stanley Cup playoffs.
100%. Yeah, good talking to you too, Andrew. It's always a pleasure, and hopefully we can do it again. Maybe as the Jets are on their 9-day wait between the conference final and the Stanley Cup final.
Now you're talking. Have a great one, buddy. Thanks again.
All right. See ya.
Great stuff with Mike Kelly, one of our faves. Thanks again to Mike for jumping on today. All right. Murat is going to join us in just a couple minutes. But let me shout out our great friends and supporters at Princess Auto. Of course, we're counting down the days to get this snow gone and get back to Princess Auto Stadium. But right now, as spring is here, many people popping into Princess Auto to get a head start on all that spring work they've been waiting to do. Of course, Princess Auto with 3 locations in Manitoba is where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new. So I'll pop in and see him on Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, out in Brandon, or shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. Wallace & Wallace has been a great supporter of ours as well. And of course, it's about to get real busy for Wallace & Wallace because they are the leaders in fencing and overhead doors. If you need the security and protection of a new fence, they've got you covered with vinyl, ornamental, chain link, welded wire, wood fences, And if you got a need in the garage door category, talk to Walls and Walls. They've got the largest selection in town, which means one to perfectly match your home and add value to it as well. Give them a call, 452-2700. They'll be happy to come down and give you a free estimate. You could also check them out online at wallacefences.com or pop down and see them in person at their showroom on Lawson Crescent, just off of Kenaston. Hey, speaking of spring and summer, we got grads coming up. We got wedding season just around the corner. Guys, if you need to up your menswear game heading into the turn of the seasons, get on down to F Apparel right now. Custom suits starting at $400, chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and the best selection of menswear accessories around. If you do have a 2025 grad in the family or you are graduating, take advantage of their great grad deal where you get a free shirt and tie with the purchase of any suit. And of course, if you need suits for the wedding day, nobody does it better at F Apparel. They've got a great discount for the wedding party when they get their suits at F. Pop down and see them, 190 Smith Street downtown. You can also check them out online, that's EPHapparel.com, and book a time to come in for a fitting as well. And hey, you know what? Just with the sunshine out, what are we at, 9 degrees today? I am quite excited for the playoffs, and I'm also excited for summer, which means another trip out to Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge. If you are thinking of maybe changing up your summer travel plans this year, why don't you keep it in Manitoba and go to one of the most unique fly-in fishing lodges you'll find anywhere. You can be on the water in less than 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg. And as great as the fishing is, the world-class hospitality is even better. Find out more today on availability for the 2025 fishing season at aikenslake.com. And make sure to check them out at all of their socials. Give them a follow at Aikens Lake. All right, Murat's going to join us in just a couple of minutes. Of course, we'll be talking about last night's big game and looking ahead to Jersey on the weekend. But just while we wait for Murat, let's hear from Nikolai Ehlers, who had been out there for a while before scoring the OT winner. Here's what Ehlers had to say about his energy level leading to that final game winner.
I felt like I was kind of just skating around. It wasn't a lot of strides, just kind of following my guy and reloading, I guess, in a way. And then I saw them change, and I thought, why not?
How about the pass from Dylan Sandberg? Kind of couldn't have done it really any more perfect, right, to hit you in stride?
No, perfect pass. At first, I was thinking, what are you doing putting that on the wall? But when you put it that perfectly on the wall and off the wall, it's, it couldn't have worked out better.
All right, yeah, an absolutely beautiful pass from Dylan Sandberg to Nikolai Ehlers, who had been out there for a while. Here's one more from Nick, or Lars, on the game where, having the top two teams in the league going toe-to-toe.
This was a big challenge for us, and I believe they felt the same way in the other room. And we played really well, I thought. When we got the pucks deep and worked down there, we got some zone time and kept them out of our own zone. So that's something that we want to keep doing against the rest of the teams that we got coming up here, because that's going to help us in the playoffs.
All right, without further ado, let's bring in Murat from theathletic.com to chop it up and break it down. How about that, Murat, last night? That was, we've seen a lot of great performances and great games this year. That one was right up there, though, between what we saw on the ice and the atmosphere in the building. It had a playoff feel to it.
Oh.
Hold on a sec, Murat. Remo was muting you for some reason.
No. I think he's got to accept this. You're good now.
All right. This is a hat trick. 3 weeks in a row.
Okay, we got the echo now.
Oh, gee. 1 sec. Good now.
All right, perfect. What's up? How about that last night? Sorry about the false start.
No sweat. No, it's a great game and a playoff style game. I love the atmosphere before the game. I don't know if anyone listening was in True North Square, but they had a DJ out. They seemed to have some sort of event going on there. Then you get in the building, the lights, the crowd, the sellout, the noise. That was all there. And then my favorite thing about it was just the way that no player on either team gave an inch in any battle. You know, Miller boards Mangiapane. Mangiapane gets up, comes after him with the cross check. That turns into a scrum. Mangiapane was getting it from Logan Stanley through the rest of the game. You have Luke Shen stepping in on Tom Wilson after a heavy hit. You have Jets battling for each other. You have the smallest player on the team, Cole Perfetti, going back at Matty Roy during a series of cross checks. It was all there. It showed that Winnipeg is ready to play that kind of game and get it done on the ice between the whistles when the clock is running too. And I thought there were a lot of really good performances, especially from the middle six, the goaltender, the defense. A lot of things went well. And in a battle of number one versus number two, a tight President's Trophy race, it's everything you could ask for.
You know, listen, there's a lot of ways to go from, but you mentioned Cole Perfetti. And listen, I spoke earlier on. I just loved his game last night. And, you know, he has answered these challenges throughout the year. But, I mean, that was a big boy game going up against some of the, best team, the best team in the league, you know, in the standings, and some of the most difficult individuals to win battles against and just to, you know, to face without a step back. And I left that game being, you know, excited for what he could do as an offensive driver on a line without Nikolai Ehlers, and even more optimistic about how different of a player he is and what he could bring to the Jets come playoff time.
Yeah, he got an assist for his troubles. You know, a nice break into the zone and a good transition play on Mason Appleton's goal. That's great. It was his, what was it, his 30th assist for his 45th point. He's on pace to clear 50 points this year. And he did it, of course, against a team that he's not supposed to be able to do that against, if you believe the critics, that, oh, he won't find time and space once the heavy hockey arrives. You know, I think he's at, is it roughly 20 points in his last 23 or 24 games? He's delivering down the stretch. But it wasn't just the offense, and it wasn't just the chances he created either. I mean, pops across the blue line, and his first touch is a seam pass to Nemesnikov across the ice. Various passes to Nemesnikov, a little pivot move right by the post that gets the puck into a dangerous spot. It was also his physicality, his tenacity. He's picking off breakout passes and attacking the other way. He's battling in the corners. He's winning pucks. He's engaging. And this is something he's been doing for a while now, like since I think January, December. I was noticing this, and I talked to him about it even before the prick comments. When he goes into a corner, he gets contact first. He engages first, establishing the battle and trying to turn it into a small area quickness sort of game. Well, he had success winning pucks in all kinds of ways in that way. And to your point, you know, a lot of people would say, hey, well, Nikolai Ehlers is what drives that line, Well, without him, look at Perfetti taking things over. I think that's a really great look. It may have been his best all-around game of his career. Like, we're talking about that type of quality. Credit to Nino Niederreiter as well for his impact on the game. I just think it's exactly what you would want to see from Cole Perfetti at this stage of his career, in this stage of the season. It could be chapter one of years worth of quality that we start talking about. Well, this is when we really noticed him step into himself.
Well, I mean, listen, it was so important last night because we were into game one of life without Gabe Vilardi for the 2025 season. He'd been there throughout the year. He'd been a staple on the top line, and everything got shaken up with Gabe's absence. Alex Iafallo moving up with Scheifele and Connor. Nikolai Ehlers playing with Appleton and Adam Lowry, and then Vlad, Nino with Cole Perfetti, and a new look fourth line with Rasmus Kapari, with Tanev and Morgan Barron. I mean, what were your takeaways, and what did you like and maybe not like about the way the lineup had and the performances of the four lines?
Yeah, I mean, let's start with Alex Iafallo on the top line. Driving the net creates the goal that Josh Morrissey banks off of I can't remember which defenseman was in front of the net at that time, but Iafallo does the little things right. He doesn't cheat any play. He commits 200 feet both directions, gets to the net and creates chaos, and that created a goal. There was also a play in the first period where Kyle Connor was absolutely dancing through the neutral zone, gets it across the offensive line. Iafallo picks it up and fires it across to Josh Morrissey for a really great chance. I can't remember what period that was, but that was a dangerous one as well. There were moments from him where you understand exactly why he's instant chemistry everywhere he goes. I also thought there were moments where the plays didn't really mesh with that top line, and Connor and Scheifele weren't always on the same page with Iafallo and what have you. But it's a start, and certainly the goal itself is a nice little bit of payoff. Again, that Perfetti line, Nino Niederreiter had a really big impact. Nice to see, right? Like the other day, he gets his first goal in ages, and we'll look at him taking over in terms of a possession style of play. I thought some offense died on Vladimir Mesnikov's stick a few times, and that's a concern. That's why you look to upgrade that player, but you never question his effort level either, and you can trust that line to play against a lot of different people. Ehlers, Lowry, Appleton. Another situation, Appleton's goal is, he had not scored in ages. It's
what
nice.
A snipe, too. That might have been like the nicest goal he's scored as a Jet.
I mean, it might be. And he reminds me almost of Andrew Kopp sometimes, in that he has maybe a higher end read of the game than his pure offensive skill set. So when he puts that puck across the grain and goes top shelf, he knows the handedness of the goalie. He's read that position. He knows where the movement is. He knows exactly what his best odds are. Is just the snipe city he took. Like that's the surprising part to me. And that was the real capper on a real nice play from everybody who was on the ice at the time. That was a heck of a goal, and good on him. Hopefully we see him do the same thing as Niederreiter did, and that's follow it up by being a really effective top of his game type of player all over the ice down the stretch, following the momentum of that goal. That was fun. Also kind of nice. I don't know if you were playing the clips. I saw that last one with Ehlers, but where Ehlers and Appleton were saying all those nice things about each other. Appleton said something like, "Obviously, I love playing with Nikolai Ehlers because he is one of the most dynamic players in this league." Like, that's unequivocal praise.
You know what? We've got that, and we didn't get to it. Remo, why don't you fire up number 16 just so people can hear this? Obviously, Appleton in a very good mood, scoring a big goal, having a big impact on that game last night, and doing it with Nikolai Ehlers, who was the overtime hero. Here's Apple on playing with Nick.
He's so dynamic offensively, so me and Laus just kind of do everything in our power to get pucks down low, make plays down low, and get fly time and space with the puck. I thought there were some entries that were real nice that just didn't quite click at the end. And then anytime you can get him flying up to ice with the puck where we can kind of push back guys and get to the net and be easy options for him, we can create offense that way too. Me and Laus try to play a simple game, so Fly to use his speed and skill and read off us. It shouldn't be too hard for him, and obviously it's our first game together in a long time, and we'll build on this and keep getting better. But there were some really good shifts and some average, but yeah, I obviously love playing with Nicky because he's one of the most dynamic guys in this league, and I think we can be really good together.
There's what Mason Appleton had to say about playing with Nikolai Ehlers, and here's the other clip that we didn't get to from Ehlers. You talked about playing with Adam Lowry and Mason Appleton. Here's what 27 had to say.
I'm trying to go out there and use my speed every single time I go out there, and try to, we're trying to read off each other as much as possible. I think today was okay. I think we had some really good shifts, and then, personally, I was maybe throwing the puck away a little too much, and playing with those two guys that are able to play down deep and hold on to pucks and create space for me and the other guy, that's something that we want to take advantage of. So, I like playing with those two guys, and we got to keep working. We got to keep building. You don't know how long you're going to be together, but, I think we've done a really good job, so that's obviously exciting for us.
So there you have it. Ehlers and Appleton and Murat. I mean, this will be in some ways, like all of the lines, a bit of a process to really hit where they're at. But a nice start, and I still go back to the good signs we saw when Ehlers was with Lowry before Lowry got hurt heading into the Four Nations. that did leave me wanting to see a little bit more of this at some point. Unfortunately, it just had to come as a result of the Vilardi injury.
Yeah, it's nice to see when things work out as well as they do. I also love like any discussion of process over results, right? Like obviously, I mean, Ehlers scores the game winner, Mason Appleton scores, and I realized it wasn't his full line on the ice because the power play had just ended. But they had a huge game in an overall impact sort of, hey, look up when a goal goes in sort of way. But you heard Appleton say it, and you heard Ehlers say it too. There's a way they want to play. There's a type of style that they want to get to. And they thought that, okay, they did it well sometimes and they didn't at other times. And they're really focusing on dialing that together. I like when guys like ask independently about things like that are so clearly on the same page, because for me, it's a sign that they're communicating about it, whether they're hearing it from the coaches and then talking amongst themselves, or whether they just recognize those strengths in each other's game, that this is the way that we're going to have success. I love that. And they're all such smart players. Even when they make mistakes or surprising plays or what have you, those three players' read of the game is really high end. And you can tell that there's a particular type of effectiveness that they think they can get to and be even better than they were yesterday.
Hey, just quickly on the fourth line, there was one moment and like we talked about how this is going to be neat to see, just because this might be the fastest line in the league when you had Kupari in with Tanev and Barron. Listen, I mean, I think they did do some good things. There was one play though when Kupari had the puck. I believe this was in the third period, and Barron was at the blue line. I think they turned the puck over or whatever, and he was waiting for the puck, and then he seemed to get a little agitated, banging his stick, and it never came, and Kupari took in. Is there a fit there with Kupari on the line, or what did you think of that? And might we see Gustafsson at some point?
I mean, it's tough because you love Kupari's speed. There was a play where kind of out of nowhere, he darted in the middle of the ice and got a stick on a redirection attempt that suddenly looked dangerous. And it was very much out of nowhere and only created because he was as fast as he is. But there are ways. There's one way in which Kupari reminds me of a younger Brandon Tanev, and that's when he's not getting things done, it still looks like he's trying so hard. Like, he's getting his cardio in. He's skating all over the ice. He's all over the place. And yet, what's the result at the end of the day? And when he's on his game, he's turned his speed and his skill into genuine offense or offensive zone time and all that sort of stuff. Well, there was a day earlier in Brandon Tanev's career where he was all wheels and chaos and all that and helped on that Lowry Kopp line. But at the end of the day, you probably thought Lowry and Kopp were having a bigger, more responsible role. So a little bit more, I want to say, reading and reacting in the form of a David Gustafsson, even though he gives up speed to Rasmus Kupari, might actually, for me, be a bit better of a fit on the line. And then let the greyhound chase his ball, so to speak. That's a line Adam Lowry gave me way back when. Let Tanev go after it. Let Morgan Barron get going as well. It's fun to have that many players who are well worthy of a fourth line job. But I wonder if Gustafsson might be a bit better glue for them, other than just chaos and speed.
Murat, I want to get to special teams, and I know you just wrote about the power play in your piece yesterday in The Athletic. But let's start off with the PK. What'd you think of the PK last night in their opportunities against Washington? And where is this unit trending now that Tanev and Schenn have been added to the mix?
Yeah, I mean, a huge kill on that Luke Schenn. Was it Luke Schenn penalty? Yeah, when he went after Tom Wilson. Wilson had just hit Appleton, and it looked as though Luke Schenn was trying to drop his gloves and get a fight going, and Wilson kept his on and skated away. That might have been the source. I actually don't know exactly what happened to cause the unsportsmanlike penalty.
That is, I mean, he'd lost one glove. It was a very chintzy call, but that was
fast. And especially if you're the Jets, you feel that it's a chintzy call, and you admire Schenn for stepping up and being there in support of his teammate too. You like everything about it, other than the fact that you have to kill a penalty. And I thought that was one of the turning points in the game. I think that. Was it shortly after that there's a bit of a makeup call, and then Appleton scores right after that power play ends? I thought that was a TSN turning points type of penalty kill for the Jets, especially without Schenn out there to be a part of it, right?
Great point.
He's been a big part. it's interesting to me too, before the Washington win, I don't know if you felt this on the show, but there's been some angst in Winnipeg.
Oh, we're talking people off the ledge after Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, that Buffalo loss, the Vancouver one. Remo told me this last night too, that they're like, that's been the sense. And I've seen some of it in my own interactions. One of the interesting things is a lot of the underlying numbers have been better since Four Nations break, as opposed to their season-long excellence heading into it. And one of those things is the PK, which obviously started the year struggling. When Dylan Sandberg was out, it struggled, all that sort of stuff. Well, it's been steadily, slowly improving throughout the year. And if you just limit things to the Four Nations break to now, they've given up the fewest shots per minute of any PK in the National Hockey League. And I don't think anybody's noticed because there have been, mistakes in other ways and losses against Vancouver and Buffalo. And then they didn't look like they dominated Edmonton like they should have when their stars were hurt. And all of a sudden it's like, well, are the Jets good anymore? Is this the second half slide that was predicted? And actually under the hood, they've been really good. And the PK has been a part of that. They can keep that kind of thing going into a bigger sample heading into the playoffs. Then where are the liabilities on this team? That was supposed to be one and still could be, but they've been doing a lot of things right lately.
Now, moving over to the power play, speaking of life without Gabriel Vilardi, hopefully it won't be too extended and we'll see him back in the near future after a week or couple of weeks, however long it takes him to return. But the trend, and listen, it was an impossibly high standard that this unit had put up for the better part of the first 50, 60 games. But what do you make of the power play? Just thoughts last night on how it looked without Gabe, the addition of Iafallo, and what they need to do to, get a few more red lights going and get that number back up close to where it was.
Yeah, I think a big part of the recent struggles was just finishing. I know that at the beginning of the year, you would see all kinds of highlight reel plays. You'd have Vilardi spinning into the middle. You'd have Ehlers emulating it on the other side, and Connor was getting into the playmaking too. I think that over the course of this slump, they were still creating a lot of chances. You saw Scheifele get absolutely robbed by the blocker top corner by James Reimer on Sunday. And it's if that goes in, I don't think anybody's really talking about the ongoing slump of the power play. But now it doesn't go in and, Vilardi gets hurt and you're wondering what's going to happen. I guess one of the concerns even before the injury was some of the shot distribution had changed. Kyle Connor was taking more shots and maybe Vilardi wasn't taking as many as before. But even then, on the whole, if you look at Connor, Scheifele, and Vilardi, the three of them combined were taking just as many shots as they had all season long if you combine them into a group. And you want those guys shooting. So that's not really, I don't see an overall concern upon Vilardi's return. In the meantime, though, you've taken his creativity off of that spot. You got a lefty there, so a little bit of the angles change. He's not as open to the middle of the ice as Vilardi would have been, and this is Iafallo I'm talking about. So that's that. You also, Vilardi can stick handle in a phone booth with his head up, and I think his read of the game, being able to stick handle that well with a guy on him and then see his options, that's an elite skill and part of what makes Winnipeg's power play so deadly. Iafallo can't replicate that. That's not going to happen. He can go to the net. He can create chaos. He can fight for loose pucks and all that sort of stuff. It's just a different skill set. There's a part of me, I guess the last thing I'll say is I want to wait and see how that they do. But also there's a part of me that says, even though he's left-handed, unlike Vilardi, Cole Perfetti more closely mirrors the skill set of being able to read multiple options and pick the right one with a dangerous pass. Maybe that's something they're going to need to look at some point as well. But yeah, we watch, we wait, and I don't think we can expect them to be as good as they were with Vilardi on the ice.
It's funny because you read my mind. I was going to ask you, if they decide to go next man up outside of Iafallo, who would it be? And, Perfetti, just, with his vision, and we've seen what he can do on the power play on that second unit with Iafallo all season long. Might be interested to see that. But at the same time, I think they want to have Perfetti and his vision and his playmaking ability on that second unit because, considering how loaded the top unit is, you take Perfetti off that one, and I think it significantly decreases in potency.
Yeah, you sort of lose your quarterback. Ideally, like the top unit, the brilliance of the top unit is whether it's Scheifele or Velarde or Ehlers or Connor or Morrissey on the puck, they all have options and a ton of plays they can make, and they can ad-lib with the best of them. On the second unit, they're running more set plays. They're running more planned plays based on their read of the PK. Credit to Davis Payne for the work he puts into that preparation. But your primary quarterback, the guy who might surprise you or make an in-moment read that cuts across the seam, that's Cole Perfetti. So I do understand if that's the perspective you want to take, that you'd be removing the skill set from Unit 2. And that might be what Scott Arniel is thinking by choosing Iafallo in his skill set to be the number one guy up. It's got to be a results thing, though. If a few games go by, if it's working, great. Then you've got two units that you can still believe in. If it's not, I mean, yeah, next man up, I think it's got to be Perfetti. Oh, pardon me. Cut myself off to say this, but in the recent times when Perfetti has been on Unit 1, Ehlers had taken a penalty, I think, and then Perfetti makes a play across the net, stuffs it off a pad, Velarde scores. He's been on the top unit for just short moments, and I think has 2 points in relatively limited action in that way. So you like to think it would also work.
Murat, it's kind of funny, a huge win and, all this talk, and we haven't even mentioned Connor Hellebuyck. I thought he low-key had a really, really strong game last night. And I thought that was important for Connor and the team, obviously. First of all, the competition and who they were going up against last night. But I think also looking back at last week, maybe wasn't the vintage Hellebuyck we've seen for the majority of this season.
Yeah, the importance is really that's the Vancouver game, right? It was probably the worst game of his season, and that was not just a bunch of goals went in. It was process-wise for me. There were giveaways in his own end. There were just moments that were not Hellebuyck vintage, like you say, and so that was a concern. So what's going to happen next? And then to come out of Comrie's game on Sunday, where there were people criticizing the goaltending again, somebody had to come in and put an exclamation mark on things and say, hey, wait a second, we actually have the best tandem in the league. And an enormous part of that is we have the best goaltender in the league. And so Connor Hellebuyck did exactly that. I recognize that there are going to be critiques of him and his big game stuff and stretch run stuff based on the recent playoffs. But I continue to believe that all these moments of panic do a disservice to his sweep against Edmonton in 2021, Game 7 against Nashville, what he did for Team USA at Four Nations, the Vezina Trophy almost guaranteed back-to-back situation now, the fact that he's on Hart Trophy ballots. He gets to have a bad game, last week, and I think he gets to have most people's confidence that he'll play like he did against Washington last night. And I think that's the most realistic projection for how he'll be down the stretch and into the playoffs, despite recent struggle.
Well, now, of course, with the win last night, the Jets get a big 2 points. They extend their lead in the division. But the Dallas Stars have been coming, Murat. And I think that is as much as been a little bit of the nerves of fans knowing what happens if you don't win the Central Division. You're probably playing the boogeymen of last year, the Colorado Avalanche, in the first round. Do you have a thought? Like, let's just say for a moment that Dallas plays Colorado. Where are you at on that series? Do you give a significant advantage on one side or the other?
Here and now, no. Like I call it a coin flip, and let's just see. Like, get the popcorn out. Those are two really good teams. The Avalanche have been a wagon too, and they upgraded their goaltending earlier this year. Brock Nelson's been a pretty good fit there. That's been a real nice acquisition. Nichas has been a real good acquisition for them. There are a lot of things going well there too. Dallas has been a wagon of late. They're playing again tonight and can close the gap a little bit again after Winnipeg got 2 points ahead yesterday. I think the spread's 8 points right now. That's going to be a battle. And they play each other in April too. So there's still a little bit of standings pressure there. For me, I guess, how would I say this? Both of those teams are extremely high quality. I think the Jets are in the driver's seat to avoid them. I believe in the Jets' path to the Central Division title, and that's what I've written today. It'll go up tomorrow. Lots of fun stats in there, projecting first-round opponents, all the details. even some Housley stats for those interested in the Housley Ukrainian male chorus returning to playoff
Here
hockey.
for it?
100%, especially after last night, but I won't deep dive that right now. So the path to the first round, I think Winnipeg's still looking at, playing against wild card 2. Let Dallas and Colorado go after each other. I don't know if Tyler Seguin will be back for Dallas. It seems he's more likely than Heiskanen. I don't know if Landeskog will be back for Colorado. He seems to be practicing more and more often. Lots of variables. Great teams. Let them go at each other.
Listen, it's 8 points right now, 2 games in hand. Those games are going to be made up the next 2 nights. They're in Edmonton tonight, and of course they get Edmonton without McDavid, without Draisaitl, and then a desperate Calgary team then tomorrow night on the next end of a back-to-back. I mean, at worst case scenario, the Jets will be even in games and have 4 points, 4 points on Dallas, and obviously the opportunity against New Jersey coming up. But I mean, we've been talking about made the track and field analogy where you're on the outside lane and you sort of are further up, but things are going to be made up as you go around the corner. That is where we are with Dallas right now. Although with the win last night, the Jets still mid-80s percentage to win the division. What is really interesting is what's happening in the wild card spot. And the St. Louis Blues have been on an absolute heater since the Four Nations. And Murat, they're now just 2 points back of the Wild. Now, they have played one more game, but the Wild are struggling. They've lost 2 in a row. They now have a -8 goal differential, while St. Louis has a +15. And, for all the talk about it was going to be for sure either St. Louis or Calgary or Vancouver, might I suggest that the Wild might be the 8th spot, and I think might be pressed to hold on to a playoff spot depending on what happens with the Flames.
I love that. And one of the reasons is one flight, whether it's Minnesota, whether it's Calgary, whether it's Vancouver, that's one flight as we do our playoff coverage and go back and forth instead of 2 to St. Louis. Beyond that, the Blues are a wagon right now. One of the best offenses in the league since Four Nations, one of the best defenses in the league since Four Nations. Binnington is going. Joel Hofer, local boy, he's also going, right? Like there's a problem building in St. Louis for other teams in the Western Conference, and I'm sure that someone in Jetsland is having nightmares about, hey, switch the coach mid-season, hit a second half hot streak, get into the playoffs, go against a higher seed. Where have we seen this before somewhere? Has this been a problem for the Jets in the past? Like there's
one big difference. There's one big difference. That team in the second half of 2019 was self-imploding on itself. This team is doing the exact opposite. They've been great all season long. They have not taken a step back. You mentioned the process, what was happening right now. And even for all this talk about since the Four Nations, I believe they're still 10-5-1. I mean, the record is the record. Their place in the standings is where they are right now. And it was free fall for the Jets in 2019, and they didn't seem to be in a good place going into that series. And they still could have easily won it if it weren't for, obviously, the infamous Game 5 and then the no-show in Game 6. So, I don't know. But it's amazing what one win against a great opponent like the Washington Capitals can do to just the mindset of some fans that have been burned before, but have thoroughly enjoyed this ride through 72 games of the season.
What happens when the heart gets involved? The emotions remember things. The emotions, like the emotional memory, right? Like it is there. Whatever the underlying numbers say, if you had your heart broken recently, you're not going to forget that overnight, right? I'm like, yeah, now you got me thinking Kevin Hayes stopping his own breakaway. He beat Binnington.
I didn't mean to go. Remis, I'm sure, just has his head in his hands right now. Just mentioning Game 5. You don't need to say what year, who you're playing. We know exactly what we're talking about right now. And anyways, it will be different. But as I say, the more I watch St. Louis play and Minnesota right now, I'm not convinced that we're going to be talking about Minnesota or Calgary or Vancouver for that final spot. And obviously, some scoreboard watching tonight and tomorrow, and then Jersey on Friday. Murat, just before we go, just to tee up what we have to look forward to in tomorrow's Athletic on the Jets.
Yeah, I went on a fun little deep dive, as I say, about remaining strength of schedule, all the head-to-head matchups. path to a division title, most likely first round opponents, sort of running the odds through that. And I'm going to update all the math to it after tonight's games as well, just to get that going. I mentioned the Housley stats, which for some reason I get a kick out of. I'm a big fan. And the other thing kind of coming out of that is Winnipeg has some history on the table, right? Like when they finished with 114 points in 2018, they managed to finish second only to Nashville. So they didn't win the division. They didn't win the conference. They didn't win the President's Trophy. Last year with 110 points, they finished behind Dallas. So there's some pennants missing in Canada Life Centre that could be hung for the first time and could represent some Winnipeg Jets accomplishments that haven't been accomplished in the 2.0 era, in the 1.0 era. Like these Jets could do stuff that hasn't been done since the WHA Jets, and that's a pretty friggin' cool thing and fun to write about. I'll tell you that too.
All right, can't wait for it. Thanks so much for doing this. We'll see you at the rink. Have a great day, my friend.
You too, sir.
Good stuff. There's Murat Atesh. Theathletic.com is where you'll get all of Murat's content. And, of course, you can follow him at WPG Murat. Why not question of the day for not Autocorp but Waverly and McGillivray is who was the Jets MVP in the win last night over the Caps? Was it the OT hero Nikolai Ehlers? Or was it the big saves of Connor Hellebuck? Was it the slump buster Mason Appleton with that huge goal? Or was it Josh Morrissey who scored and, of course, logged more than 25 minutes? Well, let's check fan feedback for Fans First. Fans First was busy yesterday with people looking to grab tickets to a sold-out game with Ovechkin coming to town. I can tell you that. Fans First is the number one spot for buying and selling Winnipeg tickets on the resale market with no fees, folks. When you go to Fans First and you look at tickets and a price, what you see is what you pay. Check out the site today over at fansfirst.ca. Well, Nikolai Ehlers, the runaway hero in Fans First fan feedback today, 73% for the OT hero, 11% for Josh Morrissey, 10% for Connor Hellebuck, who I think we sort of undersold just how good he was last night, and 6% for Appleton, who had that slump-busting goal. More thoughts in the chat. Keep it coming. Oh, I see. Winnipeg Puck sold his tickets on Fans First. Keep it coming today. Fans First fan feedback by fans, for fans, no fees. Well, speaking of fan feedback, it hasn't been great in Blue Jay land all off season, but it's time to get the positive vibes going because opening day is tomorrow. And the Blue Jays have their work cut out for them in a stacked AL East. Let's get ready for first pitch tomorrow with our guy, Josh Goldberg, who joins us now. Josh, what's going on, dude? It's great to have you back on the program. Just about ready to play ball.
Oh, yeah. I'm excited for it, Huss. It's always exciting when the season is right around the corner and we're knocking on it. And, yeah, hope springs eternal at this time of the year. Ask me in a week how I feel. We'll see. But right now, everything is sunshine and rainbows.
Well, speaking of hope, it seemed like, they closed the door, no deal on Vladdy. And now it seems like they're still talking. And there's hope of a deal before opening day. Before we talk about tomorrow's game, what's the latest on Vladdy? What are you hearing? And where are you at on the likelihood of potentially putting this in the rearview mirror and making this guy a J for the rest of his career?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely somewhat eye-opening, eyebrow-raising when you hear Ross Atkins talking the day before the season about still having hope and not wanting to get into the details too much. That's kind of his MO. But that kind of leads you to believe maybe that there's something going on there, and it would make sense. I know that things seem pretty definitive in the middle of February when Guerrero basically said they weren't close and we're not going to get a deal done before opening day and I'm going to be a free agent. Sometimes it's all about posturing and trying to improve your position a little bit and put pressure on the other side, and it would make sense to try and give it one last go before opening day because generally speaking, you never say never, but once the regular season starts, you don't really see players sign in season in terms of long-term extensions when they're months away from free agency. Like Juan Soto last year, it was never going to happen. He said a couple of times, oh, well, if the Yankees want to talk, they have my agent's number. But once the season starts, it's pretty much over. So I think that there's a chance. I wouldn't say it's a great chance, but the fact that they were prepared to go to a pretty high number and a higher number than I thought they would ever go to for him should probably make you feel a little bit more optimistic about their chances. And then Mark Shapiro last week basically saying that he was optimistic that they would get it done. That also was a departure from the norm. He's not really the type to go out on a limb, and he was saying some very complimentary things of Guerrero. So I think there's a chance. Like I think there's definitely a chance. Like I said, I wouldn't say it's a great one, but I would definitely say there's better than a non-zero chance, which is saying something.
They did get a deal done, though, with Alejandro Kirk, a 5-year deal, $58 million. What do you make of the commitment to Alejandro, who's a real fan favorite that puts him, solidly in the top 10 paid catchers in the league?
I think it's a perfectly reasonable deal. Like I don't think that it's one of these ones that's likely to bite you in the butt too much. I don't know how much realistic upside there is. Like you'd love to see him hit a little bit better than he has the last couple of years. And I think that there's a decent chance that happens, but I don't know if he's going to be able to get back to the level that he showed in the first half in 2022 when he was an all-star and was one of, if not the best hitting catchers, certainly in the American League and if not in the entire majors. But if he can be about a league average offensive catcher, which is what he was, slightly below the last couple of years, and continue to be really good defensively, then he's going to be a top 10 catcher. The bar is lower when it comes to playing catcher every day because there's just so much tax put on your body defensively that if you can just be okay offensively or better, then you're going to be really valuable. And you look at the list of catchers in Major League Baseball, there aren't that many who can say that they do both at a high level in terms of hitting and performing at the plate, and then also being really good defensively in all the ways that you need to be, because you need to manage a pitching staff. You need to frame the strike zone to steal strikes from balls. You need to throw out runners. And he did all of that last year. Like he was, by every defensive metric, he was a really good catcher last year. Like he's made huge strides. The development has been crazy because everyone thought he was going to be the offensive catcher and Danny Jansen was going to be the defensive catcher. And then they kind of switched a little bit and he became the defensive catcher and Jansen wasn't as good defensively, but was really good at the plate in terms of a power production. So I think it's a perfectly reasonable deal. Like, I don't think you're going to get a lot of age-related decline. I think it takes him through his age 31 season, and we'll see what things look like at that time. But I think you're going to get Alejandro Kirk's best years under contract for the Blue Jays. And I think considering the number and where the catching market seems to be going with Cal Raleigh signing and Adley Rutschman coming up in a couple of years, JT Realmuto is going to be a free agent. Like, I think that 11.5 average annual value is going to be something that looks perfectly acceptable, if not way better, in 2, 3, 4 years.
Josh, let's talk about the opening day roster. And in particular, Alan Roden just had an insane spring hitting the cover off the ball. Tell us about him making the club and how he projects in for the season.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it, and it's good to have something to be excited about. And I'll be really curious to see what sort of role they have for him, because you could argue that he should play over George Springer right now, and I don't think that would be out of line. Like, George Springer, he's getting up there as far as it goes in terms of age, and his performance has been declining for a couple of years noticeably. He had a rough spring. Like you said, Roden was ridiculous this spring. He had almost a .550 on-base percentage. He hit some home runs. He walked more than he struck out, and he's been that type of hitter throughout his minor league journey. Like, he walks well, he puts the ball in play, he doesn't strike out a ton. I don't know how much power potential there is there, but he's somebody who can get on base and maybe hits more doubles than he does home runs. But like, I think there's an above average offensive player in there. He's 25 years old. I don't really know how much more he has left to prove at AAA. Like, he had an over 900 OPS at AAA last year. I think it's just a case of where his fit is defensively. Like, does he play DH? Does he find his way into a corner outfield spot? I don't really care. I think you just have to find a way to get his bat into the lineup if he hits, because I still think that this lineup is in need of impact. And no matter what they did this offseason, I think Santander was a nice pickup, and they're counting on some guys bouncing back. But I still think that they're going to need that type of development, like an internal success story. And I think Roden probably represents the most likely option to turn into something of all the prospects or younger players that they have in the fold.
We'll get to the pitching in a minute, but speaking of the lineup, I mean, how does the opening day lineup project tomorrow for the Jays?
So I think the top three will be Bichette, Vladdy, Santander, and then cleanup is a real question mark. Like I've seen some people say Jimenez. I don't know if I love that, considering the struggles he's had at the plate. There's not really any great options right now. Like Kirk has done it before, but he's not, to me, a real prototypical cleanup hitter because there's not a ton of power. Springer had a tough spring and a tough season last year. Maybe it's Roden against a righty. I could see the merit in that. And that would be probably, if he's in there, I wouldn't mind that. But I think you're going to see Ernie Clement at third base. And then if it's a righty, at least until Dalton Varsho's back, I think they're going to platoon Nathan Lucas and Miles Straw in center field. Lucas will play against right-handed pitching, and Miles Straw will play against left-handed pitching. So like they're going to need their stars to be their stars. Like this is a lineup that doesn't offer a lot beyond, I think, a couple of players. So it's going to be imperative that Bichette, Guerrero, Santander get off to hot starts. Like Vladdy was really struggling at the end of April last year, and then he totally turned his season around. They're not going to be able to afford that level of struggle. Like these guys are going to have to earn their weight in the early going if they want to keep afloat, because they have a really tough schedule to start the season.
You can't win without pitching. A couple of interesting moves, and pitching. I think the starting pitching, even though the rankings amongst the league seem to be a little lower than I would thought, will be out there. Barrios is going to get the ball tomorrow. Just thoughts on what this opening day rotation is going to look like. Max Scherzer's potential availability throughout the year, then maybe on the key arms in the bullpen, Josh.
So the rotation going into the season looks good, and it's kind of a similar situation to what it has been over the past couple of years. They're in pretty good shape starting the season with the group that they have. But if something were to go awry, somebody really struggles, or obviously more realistically, somebody gets hurt, then I don't really know what the situation is going to be for them. Like the depth is still a real question mark. And Max Scherzer is going to be 41 later this season, and he's already got a thumb issue. And he's not the type who's necessarily going to be super optimistic about his body, I think, at this stage of his career. But I think anyone who says they'd expect more than 20 or 25 starts at the most from Max Scherzer this season is probably lying to themselves. And that means you're going to have to piece it together if, or more likely when, he misses time. So I think barring that, the rotation is okay. But if there are injuries, I think that, or guys who are getting a little bit older, Gosman's 34, Bassett's 36, if there's any decline there, then that kind of leaves you in a bit of a vulnerable spot. And then in the bullpen, I like what they did. Obviously, the Eric Swanson injury looms a little bit. I think they've got a good four of Hoffman, Green, Garcia, and Sandlin. And then the back four of Lovelady, Brandon Little, Yariel Rodriguez, Jacob Barnes, like that leaves a little something to be desired. Like there's not really any.
There's a few prayers movers in there.
Yeah, and you know what, Huss, like the bullpen was such a disaster last year that even if it's, I don't know, like the 18th best bullpen in the league this year, that's a big improvement. It was about as bad as it could be last year. I lost track of the number of games that bullpen cost them last year. I'm not saying they would have made the playoffs with a better bullpen, but they would have been way more competitive. And I do think that the current configuration will allow them to be more competitive. Like the margins are thin this year. I think a lot's going to need to go right for them to be a playoff contender, but I don't think they're going to be as bad as they were last year. Unless obviously like last year, lots of things go wrong, which in Major League Baseball, a grind of 6 months and 162 games is very possible.
Listen, the playoffs are expanded. We see some teams come from way back to make it every year right now. I mean, we'll get to the Coolbet lines in a minute, but I'm just pulling up the MLB futures over at Coolbet. The Jays are 3-1 plus 300 to make the playoffs, and their win total is 78.5. Might this be the year, after disappointing with high expectations, that they can actually exceed, make something happen with such low expectations comparatively?
I think comparatively is the right word to use there. I think it all depends on what would be considered a successful season. It's really tough because there's so much riding on this year. Like, there's so much uncertainty beyond this season that the franchise, it's just in this kind of paralyzed state where they're kind of caught in between. And the uncertainty around Guerrero's contract obviously plays a big part in that. If he was signed long-term, you feel a lot differently just about having a linchpin beyond this season. But there's some older guys. Like, this is one of the 5 or 6 oldest rosters in Major League Baseball. There's uncertainty in terms of some of the key pieces, whether they're going to be here, how much they have left to offer in terms of some of the older guys. So I think that I would probably take the over on the high 70s in terms of wins, but I don't think I'd go much higher than like 82 or 83 wins. Like, I think it's a slightly above 500 team. Maybe if everything goes right, they could win, 86 games or something like that. And the American League is not very good this year, so that might be enough to get you into the playoffs. I think they can be in the hunt come August 1st, but it will be really interesting if they're like 2 or 3 games out of a wild card spot at the deadline and they don't have Vladdy signed and they don't have Bichette signed, what they end up doing. And I think that there's a very realistic possibility that something like that could happen. Like, it would be more likely that was the case than, they were very much in the hunt to win the division. Like, I think that's the more likely outcome than anything.
Well, I'll tell you what, it would be very well received if they found a way to make that happen with Vlad and announce it tomorrow before opening day. And it would be huge for the team too, because that is going to be an albatross around the entire operation if a deal isn't done tomorrow. Josh, great stuff. Fill people in on where they can get your content on the Jays in Major League Baseball.
So I think as we're speaking, I believe a season preview is about to go up on the Score, and I looked at reasons for optimism and reasons for pessimism when it comes to the Blue Jays. Tried to outline a bunch that we just talked about. You can decipher which ones you think are more realistic to come to fruition than others. But like I said, this is the time of year where the canvas is blank. Everyone can kind of dream on what might happen. And it's going to be tough. They got 4 against the Orioles. I know that they've struggled in the playoffs, and no Gunnar Henderson, which is a good break for the Blue Jays, but that's not an easy draw. So they're going to have to be sharp, or they could be in a bit of a hole to start the season.
Hey, speaking of sharp, just before we go over to the lines, you got any lean on MVP, a Cy Young, anything you'd like to give us before we got to get our bets in for the start of the season?
In the NL, I like Dylan Cease as a kind of a Cy Young bet. The Paul Skeens is the chalk, I would assume, and Tarek Skubal, I assume, is the chalk in the American League. I also like Yamamoto of the Dodgers as a potential Cy Young candidate. In the National League, I would lay the odds with Bobby Witt Jr. In terms of American League MVP. Like, I just think that Judge was so dominant last year that it was hard to overlook, but Witt had an MVP caliber season in basically any other year, and I just don't see him not producing like that again. And if he's even close to that, I think he's a slam dunk. So those would be the ones that I would look at the most.
Josh, great chat, pal. Cannot wait to have you back on throughout the season. Thanks for doing this, and enjoy the ball game tomorrow.
Thanks, Hoss. Enjoyed it. Talk to you soon, pal.
Good stuff. There is Josh Goldberg. You can give him a follow at jgoldberg12 on X, and check out his work at thescore.com. It is opening day. I always used to, a number of times I would coincidentally be not feeling well. I had to stay home from school on opening day. Obviously, we'll be doing the show tomorrow. But if you're maybe thinking about playing hooky, getting out there for the Jays opener, you know where the best place to do that is Boston Pizza. No Jets tomorrow. So why don't you head on down and see the first of 162 for the Blue Jays. Great Blue Jays promos all year long at Boston Pizza. And while we focus in on the hockey right now, the boys of summer are back, and you can always catch the game on the big screen with an ice cold schooner, some world famous wings, gourmet pizzas, and more at your local Boston Pizza. And hey, for Jays fans that want to get ready for opening day, head on down this afternoon or this evening to Royal Sports at 750 Pembina Highway. All new Major League Baseball gear for the upcoming season that begins tomorrow is locked and loaded at Royal. You can check that out, get your Blue Jay gear for the season, and while you're at it, start planning for the whiteout in Winnipeg with the largest selection of Winnipeg Jets merchandise you will find literally anywhere. Tons of new Bomber gear coming in for the upcoming season as well. And tons of cool stuff on the King's Skate, Snow, and Surf side. And, of course, bikes as well for spring and all those spring activities. You can find it all under one roof at the one and only Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway. And give them a follow on Instagram at Royal Sports Winnipeg for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. And just before we get to the Coolbet lines, I will cheers myself for the incredible WST parlay we had last night that cashed all three legs on the overtime goal. But we'll also cheers our great friends at Winnipeg's favorite local brewery, Little Brown Jug.
You train day in and day out, learning new techniques, approaching new concepts, and living out the thrill of achieving your goals. Building a craft beer is no different. While you spend your hours on the ice, we spend ours here, brewing our trademark beer. Again, again, and again. Here's to pushing the status quo and challenging ourselves to build something memorable. 1919 by Little Brown Jug.
All right, good stuff. And yes, it was probably a couple 1919s being had in and around the arena last night after that game, even though it was a Tuesday night. I will say, Remis, as far as Tuesday nights go, that was a well lubed up crowd last night. And some great, I guess the Jets had a bunch of good deals that had been going on for months leading into this homestand. You saw all those flannel, those black and red jackets at the game. I saw Russ Lowen at the game, and they had a great deal where if you bought 10 tickets, not even necessarily all together, you could get the ticket, a beer, one of those kind of lumberjack jackets, and a hat. And it seemed to go over very well. I will say this, the Hoser cam has never looked better than last night with all those jackets in the crowd.
Yeah, notice the jackets. They're giving away that hat with some ticket packages coming up. My brother's texting me. He's like, hey, I want that hat. It'd be great, great for the whiteout. So I think people are getting ready for playoff hockey. It's warming up Tuesday night. There was a lot of red in the crowd as well. You mentioned the plaid shirts, but also from Capitals fans coming in to see the Ovi show last night, and he delivered. But I thought it was a great crowd. Another sold out one. I imagine we'll have a bunch more here as we head towards the playoffs. As the Jets try to lock up number one in the Central Division, maybe the West, maybe the league. We'll wait and see how it turns out, Hustler.
Guess who just popped into the chat? Our old pal PLD.
Man, he's been popping in.
PLD. Hey, listen, PLD is still, he's meant a lot to this channel and our growth over the years. Just said, hey, Jets fans, thanks for a warm welcome yesterday. See you in the Cup final. Listen, it's hard to talk about and imagining a Cup final before you even win a playoff game. But I got to tell you, I mean, I would pay to see 7 games between those two teams at some point, and the only place they can meet is the final. So it'd be pretty awesome to make that happen. Let's get over to the Coolbet lines. Yeah. And yes, I was so fired up at the end of the game. And so if you missed it yesterday, we put out the WST parlay, which was the Jets to win, Nikolai Ehlers to score, and Adam Lowry to get an assist. And Dylan Sandberg makes that beautiful play to Ehlers. Ehlers scores the winner. The roof goes off on the place. And I immediately checked to see if Lowry had an assist on the Appleton goal. I hadn't really checked that earlier on. I wasn't really thinking about that and thought, oh, well, whatever. Just pumped that the Jets had won. Then I started to get emails and texts from people that were riding. And I don't think this has ever happened, but we needed a Jets win. We needed an Ehlers goal. We needed an Adam Lowry point, and all three legs hit on the overtime goal. So a very, very fun night in the lock shop after our 19-1 winner on Monday. Tonight, though, a little bit of a lesser slate. We've got the Devils at the Blackhawks. The Devils, no surprise, minus 222 favorites in this game against Chicago. The Canucks are playing the Islanders tonight. That one's going to overtime. Vancouver minus 104. The Islanders minus 112. Bruins are in Anaheim to take on the Ducks. Both of those teams are destined for the lottery. But Anaheim's a minus 133 favorite. What's left of the Boston Bruins plus 113. And then the big game tonight, the game that really matters for the Winnipeg Jets, is Dallas and Edmonton. And we'll team up with our brethren at EST, pull for the Oilers tonight to take down one of those games in hand that the Dallas Stars have. Of course, the Stars in Calgary tomorrow night to take on the Calgary Flames. Quick update on those NHL season bets. The Central Division winner, Jets are now minus 625 to hold on. Dallas is 4-1 to come back and take the division. And the Hart Trophy still has our guy, Connor Hellebuck, as the favorite at minus 175. Nathan McKinnon is at plus 250, and Leon Draisaitl is at plus 400. And, Reem, with the switch in these odds, I am thinking, I just like to maybe just focus on it, hope that Hellebuck wins it and we cash those tickets. I mean, we got on it at 20-1 in November. It was 2-1 last week, and I know some people were on it. But what do you call it? Arbitrage or whatever? I mean, there is some options. If you do believe it's a 3-horse race, to maybe get a piece of Mack at plus 250 and Draisaitl at plus 400 and guarantee yourself a win if you got in at the 20-1 number earlier this year.
Yeah, someone was tweeting that, Draisaitl was heavy favorite, before the injury. And, if you grabbed Hellebuck before at a low price, now there's your opportunity to grab Draisaitl. So I kind of agree there. And yeah, for Jets to win the Central minus 625, that's an implied probability of 86.2%, which is in line with Money Puck. I think Mike Kelly, his model had the Jets even higher percentage. So unless they go on some crazy losing streak and, Dallas wins, every game, seems like the Jets will be the Central. But I mean, saying that is a lot different than living every game.
Trust me, if Dallas wins against Edmonton and Calgary, we're going to be doing the show on Friday, and there'll be people freaking out that they're 4 points back the Winnipeg Jets and with even games played. But listen, there still is work to be done. But as the numbers will tell you, as everything that we've talked about with Money Puck and Mike Kelly, that win last night was huge for Winnipeg, and they put themselves in a really, really good spot. Cup winner odds have actually switched a little bit. Dallas and Florida are co-favorites at plus 550. Edmonton and the Avalanche are next up at 800, plus 800. And for the first time all year, next up is the Jets. They've been 15-1. They've been 13-1. They went to 11. And now with the win last night against Washington, they actually have lower odds than the Caps. Carolina, Winnipeg, and Vegas are 10-1 right now. Washington 11-1, and Tampa Bay plus 1250. Leafs plus 1550. Of course, they're in a very, very tough division. And much like the carrot to the Winnipeg Jets of playing a wild card team and making Colorado and Dallas play each other in the first round, winning the Atlantic will be massive because two of Toronto, Tampa, or Florida will be playing each other in the first round, a very similar situation to what's happening over in the Central Division. As far as tonight's combo cards, I mentioned to you, Reem, we've been looking for ties. We've been hunting 3-point games. And this Islanders Canucks tilt has a 3-point game written all over it. Now, we didn't think that we had another tie on the board tonight. So for our partner parlay, we put together an Islanders Canucks 60-minute draw, like a game to go to overtime, and the Dallas Stars to beat Edmonton without Draisaitl and McDavid, and that's 7-1, plus 699 right now. And I'll give a little shout out to Pat Gregoire. Patty has been hot. Patty knows pucks cashed the last 2 nights. I got on it last night. Today, it's a Quinn Hughes point, a Jesper Bratt assist, and a Mikko Rantanen point, and that's boosted to plus 308. If you want a point from the point, Bouchard and Quinn Hughes, both to get points, plus 162. A little bit of hoops. And we do have our golf picks. Now, we made our golf picks today in the lock shop. Myself, Dusty, who's back, and Pat. Our partner parlay for the Houston Open, which is boosted over 20-1. Tony Finau, Wyndham Clark, and Steven Yeager, who won this event last year, all the place in the top 20. Got a nice boost over plus 20-1, plus 20.55. Check them all out in the combo cards right there. Oh, and one other thing I should mention while we're talking about this, they've got an awesome new promotion. And listen, many of you have seen some of the cool things that I've done with Coolbet. You can do that too. We've got a big UFC contest that's just kicked off right now. And offering the chance for a trip for 2 to Montreal, 2 nights hotel accommodations, and tickets to UFC 315 on May 10th. Second place is going to be a $250 Coolbet bonus to keep the good times rolling. Third place will be a Coolbet merch prize pack. But all you need to do is click on it. You can see it right there. Opt in. You can click that. And for every $25 you spend on UFC action between March 26th and April 12th, you'll earn 1 raffle ticket towards the chance at an unforgettable trip for 2 to Montreal for UFC 315. So UFC fans, get on over to Coolbet. If you haven't played there before, use the promo code WST. Hook you up with a 100% bonus up to $200 on your first deposit. Of course, they've got that great bet and get. I'm not a big UFC guy or UFC bettor, but it's the biggest no-brainer. Every weekend, if you bet $25 on the UFC, you get a free $25 bet to make after the weekend. So I always try and take advantage of that. And of course, with every $25 you spend, you will get a raffle into the trip for 2 to UFC 315. Would love to hear about a WST or a lock shopper getting in on that. So check that out over on the promotions page over at Coolbet. And one other note, Reem, I think we're focusing on, because April's going to get crazy, a little save the date for you folks. We'll confirm this maybe tomorrow. But April 6th, Sunday, April 6th, off day for the Jets. We're looking at the next edition of the Lock Shop Poker Series. So we'll get myself, Remis, Dusty, the gang, and doing. We had a great turnout last time we did it on a Sunday. Now that football's over. So I think we're going to try it again on April 6th. And we'll have more details on that as we get closer to the event. But yeah, busy night tonight. Well, not a super busy night, but lots to get to. Get the golf picks in before tee off tomorrow. And speaking of golf, shout out to my guys, Billy Ho in the Atlanta Drive. Cashed another one for us yesterday in the TGL. Absolutely love TGL, Remis. I don't know if you caught very much of it this year, but it was so much better than I had expected. I was pretty excited about it. I thought it would be kind of cool or neat. It was a huge hit. And for a guy like Horschel, who, to be honest with you, like 3-4 months ago, you would have asked me, what do you think of Billy Ho? I'd be like, not a fan at all. Seeing him operate in the TGL, I did a full 180. I love the guy now. And man, he brought the energy the last couple nights as he, Patrick Cantlay, and Justin Thomas won a lot of money last night and the first TGL championship. I think there's some real potential for this moving forward. I think a lot of other players are going to want to get involved.
Yeah, I was reading the players got a nice payday for playing some indoor simulation golf. I think viewership was okay. I saw some people tuning in that, hey, this is kind of cool. So interesting stuff there going on with the TGL.
No doubt about it. Hey, I meant to ask you, what are your thoughts on the Jays?
I think they're going to be pretty mediocre, right? And I think they should sign Vlad to whatever he wants, or it's going to get worse. That's kind of what I think. But it does seem like they improved. You know what? They improved the bullpen. I like the Santander signing, but they didn't make the playoffs last year. It hasn't gone well. They're in a pretty tough division with the Yankees. I think the Red Sox are improving, and the Orioles as well. I don't think it's as bad as maybe I thought a couple months ago, but I don't think they're going to be great. Maybe they hang around in the mix with that extra wild card towards the end of the year, but I don't know. They have they have decent pitching. I don't know. This Vlad thing going to hang over the whole year. He's going on social media talking
Maybe
about
not. Maybe they get it done tomorrow.
I mean, if they offered him $500 million, I think he got it to take it, right? Or what are they arguing about deferred?
Now they're talking about
deferred money?
$550 or something like that. Listen, I don't know. Listen, we'll know one way or the other by the time that first pitch goes tomorrow between the Jays and Orioles, whether Vladdy's going to be there long term or not. I see I see Jake in the chat. You don't have to take Huss as your +1, but you can if you want. Yes, I did announce my availability to anybody that wins that contest. I would love to do it. And I know a few good spots in Montreal too. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. That's going to be a great, great contest when we get on over there and get your MLB futures in beforehand. I think I might make a little flyer on the Jays to make the playoffs at +300. I love Josh's pick with my guy Bobby Witt +400 for MVP. I will definitely be touching on that. And again, we're playing with a little house money after a 19-1 banger of the two ties on Monday and last night's win on both the WST parlay and of course Patty Knows Puck. I will blindly ride with Pat again tonight, trying to make it 3 in a row. Great stuff today. Really fun show, obviously, coming off a game like that last night. Cannot wait to do it again tomorrow. We played that amazing call from Paul Edmonds earlier on the program. He will join us tomorrow. Cannot wait to have Paul and all of his energy join the program. We'll have much more on the Jets, the latest from practice as they get ready for the New Jersey Devils on Friday night. And that, of course, is our final WST night. Shout out to everyone that has tickets. We sold out the first batch. We added more. Those sold out. We are going to have some fun in 316 on Friday night. And hopefully we'll finish off the perfect stretch, a 6-0 season together for the WST games of the month. We're 2-0 in watch parties. We got to finish the job. And I'll tell you what, Reem, just before we go, I was thinking and talking about this afterwards with some of the fellas. And we were talking about Dubois getting his ass booed all night. And it took me back to our first WST game, which, of course, was the return of Dubois last year. And that was just the most miserable game. Gabriel Velarde got hurt. Sandberg was in his first fight, which really didn't go well. Dubois scored. The Jets lost. And that started a very auspicious start for our WST games in the package because we went 0-3. But since that game against Calgary, where we said this was a legacy-defining game for the WST section, no turning back, and we could run the table with a win on Friday night.
Yeah, and I'll say this about Dubois. It's amazing to me that this guy's moved on from 3 different teams, now on his 4th team, and when he goes back to the building of any of his 3 previous, he gets booed. He got booed in L.A. Earlier, it was a couple weeks ago when they played. I'm sure he gets booed in Columbus, and here, still getting booed, but, congrats to him on having a nice season. And, yeah, I mean, that first WST game wasn't sparked a lot of attendance conversation as well. Mentioned Velarde got hurt. The Jets lost. Dubois scored. Wasn't a great experience, but yes, since that Calgary game, did we see them clinch playoffs? They played the video when we were there last year, and they've won every game we've been at, including the 2 Boston Pizza watch parties this season. So I'm looking forward to seeing everyone for a last time this during the regular season on Friday against the New Jersey Devils.
Great stuff today, everyone. Thanks to Josh Goldberg for jumping on. Murat, Tesh, and of course Mike Kelly. That was great stuff with Mike going around the NHL. Enjoy these 4 games tonight. We'll be keeping our eye in particular on Dallas and Edmonton. And we'll look forward to doing it all again tomorrow with a recap of tonight in the National Hockey League, a little more scoreboard watching tomorrow as Dallas goes to Calgary. And then back at the rink tomorrow with the WST crew, Jets and Devils on Friday night. Folks, thanks so much for being with us. Thanks to all the sponsors that make WST possible every day. Have a great night. Enjoy the weather. It's beautiful outside. And we'll see you tomorrow at 1 p.m. right here on WST.
Oh, my God. Oh! Shut it down. Let's go home.
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.